Chapter 227. Dedale, who was soaring in the sky, looked calm. There was a kind of natural and majestic atmosphere when he raised his hand. He glanced at Dustless and Sasori of the red sand standing behind him on the ground. The feeling of flying in the sky spontaneously rose in his heart. This is a good place to display my art to the limit. Joining the Akatsuki was really the right choice. Focusing his eyes on the huge explosion below, the killing intent in Deidara's eyes disappeared in a flash. The instant art of explosion must have a perfect place and the best audience to be implemented incisively and vividly. The Sand Village, one of the 5 major countries, was the best place to test it, and what made him most unhappy was the Uchiha clan's Sharingan and Sasori who often went against him. A large amount of explosive clay was spat out from his hand. Deidara was indeed suitable for this kind of dexterous work. In just a few breaths, he created a large group of explosive spiders. Immediately, it was like a fairy scattering flowers all over the Sand Village, instantly destroying the Sand Village. Such a masterpiece is in line with the essence of my pursuit of art. Looking at the slowly falling explosive spiders, Deidara smiled gloomily as he looked down at the ninja village below, and the killing intent in his eyes was even deeper. Ha! Boom! A series of explosions suddenly resounded through the sky, and the endless blazing flames engulfed the entire sand-hidden village. Even people hundreds of meters away could feel the blazing flames and violent tremors, and the sand-hidden village at the center was even more shaken. It's a pity that it's useless. The sand village has already put a barrier in front of it, and those small spiders are not enough to destroy it. Dustless looked directly at the village in front of him that was swallowed by the fire, and his face was always indifferent. Under the observation of the Sharingan, the transparent barrier was as stable as before, and there was no sign of collapse. The number of explosive spiders was good, but their combined power was not enough to destroy this barrier. Next is the Jinchuriki. Seeing that the fire swallowed a large area of the sand village, Deidara nodded with satisfaction, and his sight spread out, and at the same time he began to look for the Ichibi's Jinchuriki. That kid couldn't have been hidden by the sand-hidden village. How is that possible? In the sky, Deidara's voice suddenly stopped as he looked at the intact sand-hidden village below with his mouth twitching fiercely. After the flames were extinguished, the sand-hidden village was intact. His pupils suddenly shrank, and only then did he see the solid transparent enchantment. Your art doesn't seem to work, Deidara. Sasori raised his head and glanced at Deidara in disdain. Then he said indifferently, if you want to kill the sand village in one blow, you have to use C0 explosion at least. It's indeed impossible. It's unrealistic to kill the sand and the Jinchuriki in an instant. Let's do it together. Don't forget that the other companions are still waiting for us to seal the Ichibi. Ignoring the ashen-faced Dedale, Dustless's gaze swept straight ahead. He frowned slightly and looked at the sand group sweeping over from afar. It seems that the enemy is already going to fight back. The sand-hidden village has been operating in the desert for more than half a century. Compared to the invaders, we are naturally more familiar with them. I'm afraid that when we stepped into this land, they had already discovered our traces. Dustless said, and he wasn't surprised. As the saying goes, there is no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. What's more, in the past few years, the eyes of the major countries have been focused on the Akatsuki. Although they don't know the location of the Akatsuki's headquarters, everyone knows that the Akatsuki loves Jinchuriki or bijou. Therefore, the villages with bijou have become the targets of other ninja villages' spies. Whoosh! Looking around, the dense sandstorm in front of them was coming head-on. The sand up to more than 10 meters high turned the sky into its own color. The momentum was monstrous and almost covered the sky. It was like the end of the world. How can my art be defeated by this vulgar ninjutsu? Looking through the heavy sand, Dedale gloomily stared at Gaara in the distance with a ferocious smile. He looked at the oncoming sandstorm with disdain, and a cold light gathered in his eyes. Looking at the desert with a sneer, Dedale controlled the clay bird under his feet to rush straight without fear. Dedale is enough to deal with the Ichibi's Jinchuriki, Gaara, we don't need to do it. Dustless's calm eyes fell on Sasori. Then he turned his head and looked forward. Suddenly, he found that there were more dense clay spiders in the air. Sasori also stared at the explosive spiders in the air with a stunned expression, and his mouth twitched fiercely. This range has already affected you and me. He seems to want to bring the two of us together. Staring at Dedale, who was floating in the sky with uncertainty, Sasori of the Red Sand said hoarsely. His tone of speaking was particularly blazing. His whole person suddenly turned into a bloodthirsty, ferocious beast. His eyes emitted a dim light, choosing people to devour. It's not that it seems, but it will definitely affect the two of us. Dustless replied. In the future, during the decisive battle between Dedale and Uchiha Sasuke, this kid will use self-explosion to affect Hoodlum, the masked man, mercilessly. With a sigh, Dustless didn't expect this kid to be so vengeful. Obviously, Dedale deliberately made him look good, and Sasori was just a bystander. This damn brat. Glaring at Dedale fiercely, Scorpio knew that Dedale was doing this deliberately. He quickly took out the puppet he had kept for many years to resist. He was not Dustless, who could ignore physical attacks. Boom! The boundless explosion began once again, and the spiders that filled the sky exploded once again. The scale was even larger than before, and the scorching heat waves that spread out in all directions revived the prehistoric ferocious beast. The terrifying power directly dispersed the sandstorm, including Dustless and Sasori. They were swallowed by the fire. Chapter 228. The explosive clay next to Dustless and Sasori was also detonated. The power of the explosion was extremely terrifying. Even if the water droplets gathered together, it could form a wave that swallowed the human body, not to mention the explosive clay. The harsh roar resounded throughout the sand-hidden village, and the transparent barrier that was used to protect the village also exploded. That guy seems to ignore my clay explosion. Deidara turned his head, and the corner of his eyes fell on Dustless. He couldn't help but calm down, and his high confidence instantly fell to the bottom. His heart was full of haze. He had been working hard for Dustless. If this guy can really ignore physical attacks. No, he can ignore physical attacks. Speculation was quickly replaced by determination. Deidara remembered the battle between Dustless and Konan, as well as Uchiha Itachi and Kisame during the invasion of the sand-hidden village. Dustless escaped from Inoki's dust release attack by some strange means. It seems that the gap between me and this guy is still big. Dedale secretly clenched his fists and said rather unwillingly. Just now, he had indeed deliberately tested the gap between himself and Dustless. It would have been better if he hadn't tried. The cruel reality immediately struck him deeply. Perhaps it was because Dedale was an optimistic person who liked to struggle, so he quickly walked out of the haze. His eyes narrowed slightly as he stared straight at the rapidly approaching black dot in front of him. The red-haired Gaara was reflected in his eyes. I didn't go to you, but you came to me on your own initiative. You're quite brave, little rascal. Deidara sneered, but his eyes were cautious. His arrogant momentum quickly converged. He knew that strategically despising the enemy and tactically attaching importance. Gaara is also Ichibi's Jinchuriki. His strength is not bad. Now he has a relationship with the Jinchuriki. It's worth it for him to treat him with caution. Those who invade the sand-hidden village must pay the price. Gaara looked at Deidara with killing intent, and his hostility broke out like a flood. Influenced by Uzumaki Naruto's fearless spirit, he has also found his own path, and his hatred of the world has become his determination to protect the sand-hidden village. But even so, Gaara was extremely cautious. The powerhouses gathered in the Akatsuki organization were all genuine powerhouses. All of them were S-level rebellious ninjas. Their strength was genuine Kage-level powerhouses. Any one of them could match the Kage of each village. You want me to pay the price? Ridiculous. A mere brat like you dares to boast shamelessly? Not only will I capture you and bring you to justice, I will also swagger out of this godforsaken place. Dedale was so angry that he laughed. He vented all the discomfort and anger he found from Dustless on Gaara. He waved his hand and used his strongest trick. The ferocious mouth in his palm swallowed the explosive clay directly. See to Jinri. The winged Jinryu suddenly appeared in the sand-hidden village. Daidara's eyes were full of killing intent, and he immediately jumped up and flew into the sky. Is it really okay for him to act so recklessly? Sasori frowned and was quite worried. It would be troublesome if he killed Gaara. Although the explosion just now was huge, it couldn't hurt Sasori, and Dustless beside him was the same. Both of them were intact. Don't worry about him. Although Deidara is reckless and impulsive, he is not the kind of person who doesn't care about the consequences. Moreover, we are worried about Deidara and not our situation, Sasori. Dustless looked back leisurely, and there were two figures behind him. He had seen both of them before. Dustless chuckled and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years, Jiraiya." "Ah. We have seen each other many times, but you ignored me. I am looking forward to meeting you again, Dustless-kun." A soft voice came, and he looked up. It was May of the Mist. What a shocking and unexpected combination. Sasori looked at the strange combination in front of him, and his expression was very unnatural. Konoha and the Sand-Hidden Village were allies, and it was reasonable for them to help each other. But what did it have to do with the mist? This is also inevitable. It is because of the sudden rise of the Akatsuki that the 5 major countries are in danger. They have to put aside their old grievances and have united to deal with you. May licked her red lips and immediately smiled at Dustless. Her clear voice was as pleasant as a silver bell. It was like the bright sun in the winter, dispelling the coldness in people's hearts. Wuchan, turn back before you're saved. Even if you're strong enough to fight against 1,000 soldiers, you're still too weak to fight against the 5 great countries. In the end, you'll still be digging your own grave. Don't go astray. Jiraiya looked at his former teammate with a complicated expression. He tried to persuade him. After all, he was his former teammate and he really couldn't do it. Jiraiya, maybe you don't know. In fact, I have hated your arrogant attitude since a long time ago. Dustless lowered his head and frowned. He used to hate Jiraiya's tone. He always looked down on others with the attitude of a winner. No one was special, and no one was qualified to say who was right and who was wrong. The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. This was the truth of the ancient times. You haven't changed at all. You always think that your beliefs and persistence are right, and other people's persistence is wrong. What qualifications do you have to deny others? Do you really think you are the savior, Jiraiya? Wuchan sneered. You always think that you are special. What a joke. You are the same as your disciples. No wonder you are master and disciple. And Dustless stared at Jiraiya and May with cold eyes. His voice was extremely cold. Maybe the Akatsuki doesn't have the power to look down on the 5 major countries, but you two can't make a big wave. Go, Sasori. Chapter 229. Jiraiya obviously expected that Dustless would refuse his proposal, and took the initiative to attack. As one of the Sannin, except for his genjutsu resistance, Jiraiya's attributes in all aspects stood at the top level of ninja, and his strength couldn't be underestimated. Almost instantly, he used body flicker jutsu to Dustless's side. Jiraiya, your opponent is me, Sasori of the Red Sand. Sasori immediately stood in front of Wuchan. For the famous Sannin of the shinobi world, he wanted to ask for advice. He wanted to see whether he was just pretending to be a big-tailed wolf, or a fox pretending to be a tiger. Feel you, Amber, tail spike. A sharp tail suddenly whizzed out from behind, jumping with a sharp cold light, like a snake rushing towards Jiraiya's face. So fast. Jiraiya's pupils suddenly shrank, his body suddenly stopped, and immediately retreated, falling back to Terumi Mei's side. He looked at the sharp spike cautiously, and his whole body was cold. If he didn't react fast enough, his throat might have been pierced by the tail. It's worthy of being the strongest organization of the renegades. Any one of them is enough to rival the Kage of the villages. Jiraiya took a deep breath, and at the same time, he couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, the number of people in the Akatsuki organization is only a few, otherwise, the world may be completely subverted. This old guy is so old, but his pure reaction is still so fast. Ordinary ninja would have been separated from his body. Looking at Jiraiya expressionlessly, Sasori was secretly shocked. With the growth of age, all aspects of human will gradually degenerate. The Jiraiya in front of him gave Sasori a feeling of not retreating but growing. His reaction speed can no longer be described as human. Don't be surprised, the opponent is a Sannin. You can't be careless, this is just his surface. Dustless cautiously said to Sasori. The reputation of Sannin is naturally not fabricated. Instead of worrying about others, it's better to worry about yourself, Dustless Kuin. A ghostly voice came from behind, and a strong fragrance rushed into his ears and nose. Terumi Mei's figure was like a ghost behind Dustless. Pincer attack, the idea is quite good, but it's useless and this smell is really disgusting. Waving his hand, Wuchen tried to disperse the rich fragrance that came into his ears and nose. Wuchen looked quite dissatisfied. He was used to the elegant and natural smell of Otsutsuki Haguro. He was very disgusted and uncomfortable with the fragrance in front of him. However, these words made Jiraiya and Sasori confused. They didn't understand and looked at Dustless. Especially Sasori and Jiraiya. They smelled themselves and thought that Dustless was talking about them. Damn brat. Mei's to SSS. Others may not understand hers, because was to her understood. Others may not twos, but she understood it of her. Saying that the smell on my body is disgusting, good boy. Staring at Dustless, Mei's phoenix eyes were burning with killing intent. The scattered killing intent turned into countless dense ice and stabbed straight at Dustless. What a ferocious woman! Glancing back, Wuchen turned his head. His whole body was covered in a golden sacred light. Wuchen, who was shrouded in the bright golden light, was particularly sacred. There was a feeling of inviolability. He easily resolved Terumi Mei's attack, and then looked at Terumi Mei with interest. Your body has grown a lot, but your head hasn't. Have you forgotten the scene of the battle a few years ago? I'm immune to physical attacks. Looking at Mei indifferently, he nodded slightly and said softly, the brat who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth has grown a lot, but his strength is still not enough to be praised. Her whole body glowed, and Dustless lost its texture as she whizzed straight towards Mei. Seeing that Dustless had completely disappeared, Terumi Mei had goosebumps all over her body. She reacted immediately, but it was still too slow for Dustless who was rushing towards her. Goodbye. Golden light gathered at his fingertips. Dustless looked at Mei indifferently. When he was about to kill Mei, a sharp cold light came from behind him. Frowning slightly, Dustless withdrew his attack and dodged the attack with his elemental transformation, easily dodging the fatal sneak attack. Sure enough. Seeing Dustless dodging his attack, Jiraiya smiled slightly, and his tone was a little more confident. Immediately, he looked at Dustless with a strong fighting spirit, and his eyes were full of eagerness. This guy seems to be aware of some of the weaknesses of glinting fruit. His pupils shrank slightly, and Dustless secretly said in his heart. Jiraiya seemed to be a rough man on the surface, but in fact, he was a man who did things without any loopholes. Glinting fruit is not without weaknesses. First of all, it is restrained by gravity, and second, every time it moves at light speed to attack people, it must be materialized. For example, when using light speed kick to attack the enemy, it must be materialized. It's impossible to directly turn into light and rush over. In addition, due to the straight-line nature of light, it can't turn while moving. Obviously, Jiraiya was aware of these problems. Perhaps since the moment Dustless joined Akatsuki, he has been studying the weaknesses of these invincible abilities. For me now, any of your techniques are useless. Seeing Jiraiya's face full of testing, Dustless shook his head and hit him mercilessly. Taking a step back, if one day the ability of glinting fruit is really restrained, the ability of Kekkei Genkai is enough to ensure that Dustless can sleep peacefully. Do you even put me in your eyes? Sasori stared at Jiraiya angrily. Even if his heart was dead, he was still angry at the moment. Jiraiya ignored him again and again to attack Dustless, treating him like air. It was outrageous. Chapter 230. It was no wonder that Sasori of the Red Sand was so annoyed. After all, he was a Super S-level treasured ninja. In the past, he even killed the third Kazekage who was known as the strongest in history, and made him into a puppet. As a strong person, he naturally had the pride of a strong person. However, in front of Jiraiya, he instantly became a pawn and was even ignored by Jiraiya. How could he not be angry? It seems that the situation is not optimistic. I can only drag it out. Jiraiya saw Sasori staring at him, and his heart sank. Dustless was a super-dimensional monster-type player, and now there was a puppet master helping him. Although it was still a 2v2 situation, it was an asymmetrical war. In other words, this battle was already doomed from the beginning, and Mei and Jiraiya belonged to the losing side, and they were about to face the inhumane torture. I can only wait for reinforcements to come. After pondering for a while, Jiraiya suddenly made a decision. There was no need to fight Dustless. He could only wait for the reinforcements of the 5 major countries to come and wipe out the Akatsuki in one fell swoop. Although the 5 major ninja villages haven't completely united, their strategy to deal with the Akatsuki was the same. The Mizuki's Mei's personal appearance explained everything. The 5 major countries sent people to ambush the Akatsuki. As long as they can hold on for a while, reinforcements will come. Sure enough, as I thought, although the Akatsuki only has a few people, they are all experts. Mei's heart also fell to the bottom, and her mood was particularly depressed. The Miss Sanbai and Rokubi were forcibly taken away by the Akatsuki. The Miss should be desperate to deal with the Akatsuki, but the cruel reality made her firm heart waver. So far, the 6-tailed beasts that were taken away by the Akatsuki haven't appeared yet. This is a huge force that can't be ignored, and it can even change the whole situation. Mizuki-sama, is there something wrong? Jiraiya looked at Mei with a puzzled expression, and his brows couldn't help but frown. In such a special time, he couldn't think too much. No problem, leave that Uchiha Dustless to me. Terumi Mei shook her head resolutely when she heard this. She quickly hid the panic in her eyes, and then said to Jiraiya. Her tone was filled with hostility. Jiraiya nodded. Although he was confused, he couldn't say much. After all, Mei's identity was the Mizuki of the Mist Village. Her identity was above him. And Jiraiya didn't have any official title. Although the Sanin's reputation wasn't weaker than the Mizuki's, the Mizuki could command the Mist Ninjas, but he couldn't. What an annoying gaze. Dustless's eyebrows were gloomy, and his eyes were locked on Terumi Mei. That gaze made him feel uncomfortable, especially Terumi Mei's eyes, which made Dustless angry. He felt like he was being treated as prey. Let me see where you get the confidence to challenge me. His eyes narrowed, and the light that shot out was exceptionally cold. The bone-piercing cold light made people not dare to look at him directly. His scorching gaze seemed to be able to blind people's eyes. However, unexpectedly Mei didn't retreat and took the initiative to attack. On the other hand, Sasori, who had long been unhappy with Jiraiya, launched an attack on Jiraiya, and decisively took out his trump card, which was a powerful puppet made by Sandame. Facing the magical magnet release, Jiraiya was also exhausted for a while. He couldn't join forces with Mei to eliminate Dustless. You dare to fight me one-on-one, you really don't know how to write the word death. Dustless looked at Mei faintly, and the sneer on the corner of his mouth became more obvious. He sneered and said, "Or do you think I won't hit a beautiful woman?" The evil and dark eyes shot out from his pupils, and the focus of his gaze was on Mei. "You're really brave. I'm using Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and you still dare to look at me like this." Seeing Mei looking at his eyes, Dustless was puzzled. It's a well-known fact that you can't look at the opponent's eyes when fighting against a ninja with Sharingan. The black pupils turned into scarlet 5-pointed Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the powerful eyes were filled with palpitating power. Even Jiraiya, who was fighting with Sasori in the distance, was stunned. At this moment, Dustless gave people the feeling that he was a demon in human clothing, extremely evil. Don't look at his Sharingan, the Uchiha clan is best at Genjutsu. Jiraiya thought that Mei didn't know the power of Sharingan, so he shouted at her. Dustless's control of Sharingan has reached an incredible level. Sharingan is his specialty. In the past, Jiraiya and Dustless fought against the Sand Hidden Village, and participated in the battle against the Rock Hidden Village. Naturally, Jiraiya knew how terrifying Dustless's use of Sharingan was. Perhaps it's just a casual glance. and you don't realize that you're in the genjutsu world. It's ridiculous to say it, but that's the fact. The genjutsu of Sharingan is so terrifying. Is it useful? When she sees the Sharingan, it means the end of everything. Dustless indifferently glanced at Jiraiya, who was entangled by Sasori, and smiled indifferently. Some genjutsu can't be defended just by knowing its weakness. Tsukuyomi. The world in Mei's sight suddenly changed, and she was eroded by Dustless's spiritual power that poured into her mind, and her whole body appeared in a crimson world. This is his genjutsu world. Carefully looking at the unknown world in front of her, Mei said in a deep voice, and secretly guarded against the strange environment in front of her. She had a strange feeling that everything in this strange world is her enemy. It's useless, since you were forcibly pulled into the world of Tsukuyomi by me. The outcome has been decided. Everything in this world is under my control, and I am the god of creation. I advise you not to resist, so as not to suffer physical pain. Suddenly appearing in front of Mei like a ghost, Dustless looked at the pretty face in front of him, and a playful smile flashed in his eyes. Let me show you something interesting. In front of Mei's eyes, a crystal screen-like square frame suddenly appeared, and a fighting scene suddenly appeared on it. The content was the scene when Dustless and Conan went to capture the Sanbai, including the final scene of the fight between Conan and Mei. Of course, the fierce fighting scene between Mei and Conan, as well as the secretly watching, Dustless with a sneer on his face were all played in the crystal frame in front of her. You bastard, I'm going to kill you. Mei saw that she was fighting with Conan, and Dustless was hiding in the distance as an audience with a smile on his face, and there was a playful sneer on his face, which immediately made Mei furious, and her beautiful eyes almost spewed out fire. She raised her hand and swept it over. I should have said that I am the god of creation in this world, and you will only suffer if you resist me. Shaking his head, Dustless stared at the flying jade hand, and the frivolous smile on the corner of his mouth became even more obvious. His whole person seemed to be a different person, and it was extremely strange. He said with a strange smile, If you don't stop, I don't mind replaying the scene of that day. You bastard, you better not be too complacent. Mei's face was livid, and the hand that swept toward Dustless also stiffened. She quickly retracted her jade arm, and her fierce eyes scraped the proud face of Dustless. If she could, she would definitely tear that stinky face into 8 pieces. She never thought that the face that used to be calm in the face of everything would be so annoying at the moment, but it was precisely because of this that Mei suddenly felt that Dustless was somewhat human. It turns out that this guy also has the temperament of a human. In the past, Wu Chun gave Terumi, Mei the feeling that he was like a sculpture. He didn't have the feelings that a human should have. He was like a bright moon that people looked up to. Although his current appearance was a little bad, it finally gave him a layer of color that a human should have. He was not as old-fashioned and indifferent as before. What's so funny about you? Slightly frowning, looking at the smiling face of Mei, Dustless asked with a displeased face. At the moment, this girl was a fish on the chopping board, but she still had the mood to laugh. Tell me your purpose. You deliberately let my genjutsu hit you. What is your conspiracy? Even if she was stupid, it was impossible for her to look directly at the Sharingan, especially Dustless's Manjikyu Sharingan. Mei not only knew about it but also saw it. The genjutsu of the Sharingan was known to the world. Mei looked at Dustless's eyes. Obviously, it was intentional. Everyone knew that there must be a demon behind this. You saw through it. Mei just smiled when she heard this, but after thinking about the current situation of the mist, her smile quickly disappeared. She stared at Dustless's face and said seriously, I'm here to cooperate with you. Mei's face was serious, and she didn't look like she was joking. The situation of the mist wasn't good. They had a lot of advantages outside the isolated island, but they also had a lot of disadvantages. They couldn't compete with the other 4 great villages. And the most important thing is the sudden emergence of the Akatsuki organization. They seized the 6-tailed beasts with overwhelming power. Even if all the ninja villages of the 5 major countries were gathered together, Mei didn't think that the odds of winning were much, or even that there was no chance of winning. Since they were going to hell, it was better to collude with the Akatsuki. Maybe the mist would be destroyed by the enemy forces in the future, but they wouldn't die early. At least, they wouldn't die early. But if they fought with the Akatsuki, their destruction would be close at hand. Cooperation with you? A trivial person who is about to die dares to talk about cooperation. Ridiculous. Looking at Mei with a sneer, Wuchen didn't hide the contempt on his face. The basis of cooperation was mutual benefit. Cooperating with Mei's village could reduce a strong enemy, but it still didn't make much sense. What's more, as long as he kills Mei directly, the Mist Village under her lead will inevitably collapse. Maybe in this sinister world, the Mist Village will become the target of all shinobi villages. In other words, as long as I have a bargaining chip to move you, we still have a chance to cooperate, right? A confident smile appeared on Mei's face as she asked Wu Chen. Her tone was filled with calmness. What exactly is this little girl planning to do? Dustless's pupils shrank, and his brows were tightly twisted together. He couldn't help but be suspicious. He was curious about what kind of bargaining chip Mei had. He didn't think that the Mist was qualified to cooperate with him. In that case, why don't you tell me? If you can move me, we can discuss cooperation. If you can't, you should know the result. Looking at Mei calmly, Wuchen said softly. Although the leader of Akatsuki is Pain on the surface, the two masked men behind the scenes are naturally Uchiha Obito, and the other is Wuchen himself. It's just that the role of the masked man is now replaced by the puppet Uchiha Kagami he controls. If the conditions are right, Dustless can naturally persuade Pain to agree to cooperate with the Mist. Chapter 231. The smile on Terumi Mei's face became more obvious, outlining a soul-stirring arc. Even Dustless, who lived among the beauties, was slightly sluggish. He unnaturally avoided Terumi Mei's gaze. There was no need to deliberately dress up. The seduction that was imperceptibly emitted was the most fatal. You will definitely be interested in this information, and you can't refuse me. Mei's smile quickly disappeared as she looked at Dustless seriously. This was her bet on the future of the Mist Village. She couldn't afford to fail, and she couldn't afford the consequences of failure. If she failed, the Mist Village would be swallowed by other big countries. The purpose of the Akatsuki is the Jinchuriki. At present, the only remaining Jinchuriki are the Kyubi and the Nibi, and the Ichibi Jinchuriki you are chasing. Mei's eyes flashed, and her tone suddenly increased a lot. The Nibi Jinchuriki of the Cloud Village seems to be a bit strange. If you want to start with that little girl, I advise you to hurry up. What do you want to say? Dustless frowned slightly as he asked with displeasure. He always felt that Mei's words had a hidden meaning. Mei's eyes were fixed on Dustless's body, and she replied directly. You seem to have killed his younger brother, Killer Bee, and Yondaime Reikage couldn't wait to get rid of you. This doesn't seem to be related to the basis of our cooperation. If that's the case, unfortunately, the cooperation failed. Dustless's calm face was filled with murderous intent. He didn't want to hear such a trivial question. Even if the fourth Reikage hated him, Dustless still lived freely for many years. A man who changes his face faster than flipping a book. Terumi Mei muttered in dissatisfaction and no longer kept Dustless in suspense. She bit her thin lips and said in a deep voice. The lunatic Reikage seems to have imprisoned the Nibi Jinchuriki. If something unimaginable happens, he seems to intend to bury Yujito Nibi and the Nibi in her body together. Terumi Mei took a deep breath. She couldn't help but sweat for Reikage's madness. Killing a Jinchuriki was something that he could do. If he dares, I will wash the Cloud Village with blood. The murderous aura spread in all directions. Wu Chen's tone was as cold as an iceberg. His eyes were blood red, and his body was surrounded by black fog. He looked like a soul-sucking messenger from hell, which made people shudder. Even with Terumi Mei's mentality, seeing Dustless in this state, she subconsciously stepped back. Their target is indeed the tailed beasts. Terumi Mei looked at the change in Dustless's expression. To be able to anger him like this, it showed how important and indispensable tailed beasts were to Akatsuki. Damn Reikage. The green luster in his eyes was more ferocious than a beast. Dustless found that he had never wanted to kill someone so badly. And with Reikage's crazy character, Dustless didn't think that he couldn't do it. He still knew Reikich's ruthlessness. In the future, in the Fourth Shinobi World War, this old guy will kill Uzumaki Naruto if he doesn't obey. If the situation gets out of hand, Reikich will definitely kill the Nibi himself to completely prevent future troubles. This is enough to prove the sincerity of the Mist Village. Taking a deep breath, Terumi raised a faint smile. It was very charming, like a spring breeze, looking at Dustless seriously. Your chips are still a little short. Unless you tell me where Nibi is imprisoned, or give Nibi to me, I can reluctantly accept your proposal. Shaking his head, Dustless flatly rejected. If she wanted to cooperate with him based on such worthless information, then Terumi was overestimating herself. Are you trying to cheat? Terumi's pretty face suddenly collapsed, and her slender fingers indignantly pointed at Dustless. Terumi didn't release her nether chi, and cursed Dustless in her heart. After cursing Dustless dozens of times, she stared at him with dissatisfaction. That's not what you said before. So what if I cheat? Dustless sneered disdainfully and sarcastically said, Don't you think it's ridiculous that you want me to drag the Mist Village from hell to heaven? Everything has a price. This is not a problem. After a quick exchange of glances, Terumi's expression became resolute. She was now in hell, and there was no way back. When she told Dustless that Reikich was going to kill the tailed beast, it meant that there was no way back. Terumi had to agree. This was the reality, there was no turning back. Deidara should be finished soon. Thinking of the passage of time, Deidara should also solve the Ichibi. Just when Dustless was about to solve the Genjutsu world, Terumi's slightly shy voice sounded. I just saw the part of your body that was exposed, I didn't see other parts. Don't worry about it, you don't have to worry about marriage in the future. Anyway, I won't tell anyone. It seemed that Dustless saw Terumi's worry. He shrugged and said calmly, This is an unavoidable factor. After all, you were our enemy at that time, and I must pay attention to your words and deeds. As an enemy, it's good that I didn't attack you with Conan. Then shouldn't I thank you for not killing me? Terumi was so angry that she laughed. The corner of her mouth twitched violently. Her eyes were spitting fire as she stared at Wu Qin. She had never seen such a shameless person who inverted right and wrong. He was peeking at others but said it in such a dignified manner. She would never forget Wu Chen's wretched smile. If you want to thank me, I can only accept it. Ignoring Terumi's anger, Dustless calmly said, including the time of the Third War, and later when he went to the Mist Village to catch the Sambai, and today, it was already 3 times that he let her live. It was reasonable for her to thank him. Chapter 232. Jiraiya and Sasori were also fighting fiercely. The range of their battle was also very large, with a radius of more than 1 kilometer. Worthy of being one of the Sannin, Jiraiya, I really can't underestimate him. Not only is he not weaker than me, but I was even inferior to him in the confrontation just now. This old guy is still so strong. Sasori stared gloomily at Jiraiya, who also had a heavy face, and couldn't help but take a deep breath. This old guy is too terrifying, especially after he summoned those 2 strange toads with Jiraiya. Sasori's weakness became even more obvious. Looking up, he saw 2 toads standing on each of Jiraiya's shoulders, and a lot of tiny pimples appeared on the bridge of Jiraiya's nose. He had entered Sage mode. Damn, what's going on? I just summoned 2 stinky toads. How did my strength become so much stronger? Sasori was expressionless, but he was puzzled. He naturally didn't know what the so-called Sage mode was, and he had never seen it before, but at this moment his greatest interest was to dissect Jiraiya's body. What a troublesome guy. Jiraiya, who entered Sage mode, wiped his sweat. Although he had the upper hand with the power of Sage mode, Sasori of the Red Sands puppet manipulation ability was really terrifying. It was as if he was a living person, and the magical magnet release was particularly troublesome and impossible to guard against. Little Jiraiya, every time you summon us, the enemy is not ordinary. An old voice came from the toad's mouth on the left side of Jiraiya, and the tone was a little dissatisfied, because when Jiraiya summoned them, it was never a good thing. Yes, boy, I have to cook for the children. The toad on Jiraiya's right shoulder also complained to Jiraiya. From the magnetism of the voice, it was obviously a female elder. Hearing this, Jiraiya just smiled bitterly. This was indeed an undeniable fact. Over the years, when he summoned the two toads of Mount Mayaboku, he encountered unprecedented strong opponents. This boy in front of me seems to be very unusual, and the Kekii Genkai of that puppet is very troublesome. I can't be careless. Fukasaku Sanin cautiously stared at Sasori's puppet. His toad face was full of caution. The ability to control gold dust could not be described as a headache. That's the third Kazekage of the Sand Village. His disappearance triggered the Third Shinobi World War. It seems like he was forcibly captured and made into a puppet. Jiraiya's tone was very heavy, and at the same time, he felt incredible. He naturally knew the strongest Kazekage in history, and he even fought against him once in the past. Akatsuki is really a monster that affects the world's peace, Jiraiya said in a low voice. If the third Kazekage didn't go missing, then maybe the Third World War wouldn't have broken out. To some extent, the person who turned the third Kazekage into a puppet was the culprit. It's my honor to be praised by the Sannin. Sasori lowered his voice and said in a hoarse voice. After all, Jiraiya was a figure who dominated the ninja world during World War II. You have such strength to begin with. You don't need my flattery. Jiraiya said and looked at Sasori with appreciation. Whether it's strategy or strength, being able to forcibly erase the third Kazekage is enough to prove that Sasori is extraordinary. Jiraiya's eyes couldn't help but dim. He looked at Sasori with a complicated expression and sighed. Both of you are peerless geniuses. The only pity is that both of you are like Dustless. Both of you stepped on the evil path. Jiraiya's mouth suddenly raised a self-deprecating smile. Remembering the words of Dustless before, he suddenly realized that he was just a passerby in the long river of fate. He wasn't qualified to criticize others. Everyone has their own story and life. You don't have to like him, but you are absolutely not qualified to criticize him. It's really like what Dustless said. You are a person who likes to preach, but a hoarse voice gushed out from Sasori's mechanical throat, mixed with the sound of steel, making people shudder. Immediately his voice stopped abruptly. Looking at Jiraiya, he raised his voice and said, the puppet made from the corpse of Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, must be very powerful. So give me your body, Jiraiya. Sandame Kazekage's puppet suddenly roared and stood in front of Sasori, staring at Jiraiya in the distance. Sasori's voice was even colder, as if he was a ghost messenger from hell. Whoosh! Sasori controlled the corpse of the third Kazekage to jump into the air, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Iron Sand Shigure. Whoosh! A dense amount of iron sand roared, and the iron sand was deformed into small particles. There were countless of them, and they carried out a large-scale attack like a shotgun. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch with the eyes. There is no possibility of avoiding. In that case, I can only fight head-on. The hesitation in his eyes quickly turned into determination. Jiraiya's natural chakra erupted rapidly, and the rushing chakra all gathered in the palm of his hand. The huge blue energy ball was clearly visible, and it was madly devouring the chakra in Jiraiya's body, and increasing its size and power. Senjutsu, Otama Rasengan. Jiraiya jumped up with the high-speed rotating chakra ball in his hand, and he rushed straight toward the iron sand that was roaring down from the sky. The Otama Rasengan in his hand that contained the power of nature was also thrown out, and he was not afraid of the dense iron sand. Boom boom boom. At the moment when the black force ray and the dark blue halo came into contact, the void suddenly trembled violently, and a blazing wave of air was thrown out. The power was not ordinary. The iron sand that looked extremely hard was destroyed by the force of the celestial method. Super Kodama Rasengan. It was even directly ground into iron powder. Although it was a momentary confrontation, the power of the two was not at the same level. Chapter 233. Seeing his jutsu being destroyed by Jiraiya, Sasori's eyes suddenly became gloomy, and his eyes were filled with killing intent, as cold as frost, and his whole body was surrounded by a majestic chill. He thought that Sasori would go up and fight Jiraiya to the death, but the former calmed down as if nothing had happened. He just quietly observed Jiraiya and the two toads on his shoulders. His chakra seems to be wrong, it's more powerful than mine, and it seems to be integrated with some other elements. Sasori's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing the light of wisdom. A qualified ninja not only needs to know how to defeat the enemy, but also learn from the enemy's moves to improve himself. It doesn't seem to belong to the inheritance of the Kekkei Genkai. It's really rare. Sasori said with emotion, and his eyes were shining. Obviously, he was surprised by Jiraiya's ninjutsu that he had never seen before, and even had a faint desire to possess it. It was obviously a sparse and ordinary chakra, but it seemed to be integrated with some unknown force. That's it, I'm going to capture your sand village. After activating Sage Mode, Jiraiya's strength skyrocketed, and he made a lot of progress in all aspects. His hand seals were extremely fast, and almost in the blink of an eye, Jiraiya already completed the seal. You want to capture me? You're really arrogant. Staring at Jiraiya with uncertain eyes, the killing intent in Sasori's eyes became more intense. When he was about to take out his strongest card to fight with Jiraiya, Dustless's voice suddenly came. At the same time, Jiraiya's jutsu was also completed. Turning other people's ninja village into a monster, and then patting your ass and leaving? There's no such good thing in the world. Senjutsu Gomen. The senjutsu was a mixture of 3 kinds of ninjutsu, and the power of the toad oil and the wind release developed the power of the fire to the limit. The terrifying and frightening super large-scale fire rolled over, and even Sasori felt the aura of death that he had never felt before. Looking up, it was the combination of senjutsu of Mount Myaboku and Jiraiya, and its power couldn't be underestimated. Senjutsu. But there are so many flaws. I'll play with you next time, Jiraiya. Dustless appeared out of thin air and landed beside Scorpio. At the same time, golden bones overflowed from his body and wrapped around Dustless and Scorpio. The thick bones formed an absolute defense. Although immortal techniques were powerful, they could not shake the golden bones at all. What an evil feeling. What technique is this? Shima Sunnin and Fukasaku Sunnin looked at each other in dismay. They could see the astonishment and disbelief in each other's eyes. The horror in their eyes was obvious. Ever since the 3 of them teamed up to release the sensei spell, this was the first time they were easily resisted. The golden skeleton bathed in the sea of fire was like an existence that could restrain celestial spells. Its solid defense could not be broken through at all. Even if the fire surrounding the golden light engulfed it, it could not melt it. The abnormally thick skeleton was clearly similar to the negative emotions of the tailed beast, perhaps even more so. Golden skeleton. He seems to have released this technique in the past. It seems to be called something like Kinsusinu. Jiraiya suddenly recalled the technique he used when he teamed up with Dustless in the past. Although it was different today, the evil aura was still very similar. Dustless also mentioned this technique to him in the past, and there were some vague memories in his mind. The Uchiha clan's Sharingan. This evil eye power is not weaker than the tailed beast. Sasori, who was deep inside the Susanoo, sighed with emotion. His stooped body slightly raised. Carefully observing the huge skeleton, he was stunned. It was not difficult to see that this was only a small part of it. The scale was not even 1%. Sasori didn't dare to imagine how amazing it would be if these bones were reassembled one day. Senjutsu. Jiraiya, in my opinion, let's stop here today. See you later. Seeing that Jiraiya was about to fight, Dustless's calm tone suddenly interrupted him. He had to remind him of the current situation. At the same time, he pointed to the unconscious Terumi Mei on the other side. There was no point in fighting like this. It seems that the other side is also done. Slowly raising his eyes and looking at the giant white bird in the distant sky, Dustless nodded. Deidara was clearly visible above, as well as Gaara, who was dragging his tail, could also be seen. However, Deidara seemed to have some problems. His face was pale and weak. He was obviously still holding a broken arm in his hand. His sleeve was still scarred with bloodstains. There was no doubt that this broken arm was naturally his own. It's really embarrassing. Scorpio originally wanted to open his mouth to mock Deidara, but he shook his head after thinking about it. Recalling his previous situation, he decided to forget it. Although he did not lose to Jiraiya, it was a fact that he was at a disadvantage. There was nothing to be proud of. What's more, Deidara was a bit embarrassed, but he still completed the task. 2 giant white explosive clay birds fell from the sky. Dustless and Scorpio looked at each other and jumped up. Goodbye, Jiraiya. Dustless looked indifferently at Jiraiya, who seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant. He retracted his gaze and swept straight towards the distant sky. He could understand and feel the sadness in Jiraiya's heart. Under the reflection of the setting sun, the entire sand-hidden village was in this blood-red setting sun, showing a sign of the setting sun. Jiraiya's back was particularly stooped, as if as long as the evening wind erodes him, he will be annihilated in an instant. The capture of Ichibi is finally completed. Terumi Mei, the hidden chess piece, has also been placed. Next, we just have to wait quietly for Nibi's information. Above the endless void, the big bird made of explosive clay flew forward quickly. Its destination was naturally the cave that was sealed before. Chapter 234. In the dark and gloomy cave, even if the light was dim, one could vaguely see a giant with a huge body. It was full of the smell of decay and vicissitudes, as if it came from ancient times. The desolate atmosphere made people dare not underestimate it. The giant looked ferocious, and its 9 ferocious eyes were very evil. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the incarnation of an evil spirit. Its whole body was uneven, like a dead tree, without any signs of life. There was no doubt that such a ferocious and huge body was naturally the Gedo Mazo. His thick fingers were pointing upwards, and each of his 10 fingers occupied several figures. Naturally, they were also the members of Akatsuki organization. All of them were calmly standing in their own positions, waiting for Dustless, Sasori, and Deidara. Why are you dawdling? Don't tell me you've been killed. After a few hours, Fei Duan finally couldn't help but grumble. It was no wonder that Haydn was so dissatisfied. He was an impatient person, and now he had to wait in this dark cave for a few hours. It was too uncomfortable. Impossible. There must be some unexpected situation that delayed it. A light and sweet, but also unusually indifferent female voice sounded from the darkness. The tone was resolute, and mercilessly denied Haydn's statement. The light voice was like a stone falling into the sea, setting off several feet-high ripples. It immediately attracted the attention of all the members of the Akatsuki organization, and they looked at the looming figure in the darkness. Even Uchiha Itachi's eyes flashed with ripples. He looked at the hazy figure. He didn't expect that the Dark Angel, who was usually cold like an iceberg, would speak for others. Conan, could it be? Pain, who was sitting on the top of the Gedo Mazo's head, also flashed with surprise. He looked at Conan, who was on the finger of the Gedo Mazo below. So far, Conan was the only woman in the Akatsuki organization. It was self-evident who spoke for Dustless. This is not a bad thing. With a smile on his face, Pain was silent. He quietly closed his eyes and rested. Suddenly, he felt a lot lighter, and the stone that had been pressing on his heart disappeared. Nagato, who was controlling Pain, breathed a sigh of relief. Yahiko was dead, and he really didn't want to see Conan go with him. His biggest wish was for Conan to have a good home in the future. Even if Uzumaki Nagato didn't like Conan's new home, especially his foxy smile, there was no doubt that he was a trustworthy person. Those 2 art masters won't die so easily, not to mention they're still Dustless. Kisame said with certainty. After all, he is an S-class ninja. How can he be killed so easily? In addition, there is also Uchiha Dustless. If he is killed so easily, it will be ironic for them. After all, they are from the same organization, especially when he was defeated by Dustless in the past. Let's wait. Itachi opened his eyes. He never thought that Dustless would be killed so easily. After all, he was his elder brother. Although the reason was a bit ridiculous, it was the truth. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, half an hour passed. Just when Haydn couldn't help but complain again, Pain, who was sitting on the Gedo Mazo, suddenly opened his eyes and looked straight at the cave in front of him with Rinnegan. Is it Zetsu? The indifferent voice lingered in the gloomy cave for a long time. And then he saw the Nepenthes breaking out of the ground, and Zetsu formed by Inyang people came into view. Are those three guys dead? Tell me and make me happy. Staring at Zetsu, Haiden asked with interest. He looked forward to Zetsu, but he was destined to be disappointed. Dustless, Sasori and Deidara soon appeared. You are not dead yet. How can I be willing to die? Deidara's sneer resounded in the dim cave, and then three figures appeared in front of everyone's eyes, but their clothes were really unflattering. Deidara, you are so fragile. You will definitely be the first one to die in the future. Looking at Deidara with disdain, or the broken arm in his hand, Haiden also chose to ridicule him, but his heart was inevitably silent. Bickering is bickering, but Deidara's strength is still well known. Now his arm was broken by brute force, which is enough to prove the extraordinariness of the enemy. Including Sasori's body, there are some messy gaps. The 5 major countries seem to have joined forces. Although there is no sign of a complete union for the time being, I believe that it won't be long before they will abandon their past grudges and completely come together. Black Zetsu said hoarsely, and everyone can hear the heaviness in his words. After all, the power of the 5 major countries is definitely not so easy to resist. Perhaps there are many S-class ninjas in the Akatsuki, but there are more S-class ninjas in the 5 major countries. You seem to have been ambushed. Pain just nodded thoughtfully when he heard this. This is also what he expected. He then looked at Dustless and the others, and his voice was low. It seems that the people who ambushed you are not simple. Sasori and Deidara are quite embarrassed, especially Deidara with a broken arm. It can no longer be described as embarrassing. Terumi May of the Mist Village and Jiraiya of the Sannin. Without any concealment, Dustless said truthfully. A person who could force Scorpio to be in a difficult situation, without thinking, he knew that this person was not an ordinary person. The 5th Mizukage and Jiraiya. It turned out to be him. There was a faint ripple in Rinnegan's eyes. Pain's eyes flashed with a strange color and a fierce light. He secretly decided that even if one day he meets Jiraiya, his former teacher, he will kill him. For Pain, anyone who hinders the development of world peace must be punished by God. Even his former teacher Jiraiya is no exception. Chapter 235. Looking at Tendo Pain casually, Dustless didn't bother to talk nonsense. He didn't need to get involved in the grievances between him and Jiraiya. This was a private matter between them, and Dustless, an outsider, was not qualified to intervene. Temporarily seal a chibi. After pondering for a while, Pain decided. Jiraiya was just a passerby in the long river of life. He shouldn't worry about such a small character. He wasn't qualified. Hearing this, the members of the Akatsuki nodded, and at the same time, looked at the half-dead Gaara with pity. This genius boy who just became a Kazekage was about to fall. He could be said to be the shortest Kazekage in history. Dustless also jumped onto the Geto Mazo, and immediately attracted Conan's attention. Is there something wrong? Seeing Conan looking at him, Dustless touched his nose and asked awkwardly. Being stared at by such a beautiful girl like Conan, Dustless felt extremely uncomfortable. Even if Conan was over 30 years old, the traces of time did not leave on her face. No. Retracting her gaze, Conan replied calmly, as if she was looking at a sculpture just now. Her expression was very calm. No, my ass. Dustless glared at Conan and secretly slandered her in his heart. Looking at Conan's indifferent face, Dustless was too lazy to ask more. As the saying goes, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. When she wants to say it, she will say it. When she doesn't want to say it, it's useless to ask. At the same time, Sasori and Deidara also returned to their positions. All the members of the Akatsuki returned to their positions, and the scene suddenly became serious. They looked at each other, nodded, and immediately made the same hand signs. Phantom 9 seals. Kakaka. The tightly closed mouth of the Geto Mazo opened like a stone door, and the breath of decay and vicissitudes came out from its throat. The dense fangs flashed with dazzling light in the dark space. At the same time, Gaara, who fainted on the ground, also floated in the sky, wandering like duckweed. The Gedomazo's mouth suddenly spewed out a special energy fluctuation. The energy fluctuation that had never been seen before was like a tailed beast or the natural enemy of Jinchuriki, covering Gaara's whole body. In the blink of an eye, majestic chakra swept out of Gaara's body. This disastrous chakra was obviously not the chakra of humans. It was like a collection of negative emotions. Hatred and evil were not something that humans could possess. Without a doubt, it was Shikaku's chakra in Gaara's body. Shikaku also seemed to feel the existence of its natural enemy, and began to struggle desperately. The chakra that overflowed from the surface returned to Gaara's body. You still want to resist? Fool, get out here. Pain looked disdainfully at the chakra that returned to his body. His Rinnegan burst out with cold light, and chakra gushed out as if it was free, increasing the strength. The other members of the Akatsuki did the same, increasing the output of chakra. Shikaku's chakra that retracted into the body was slowly pulled out again. The disastrous chakra filled the entire cave. Even Shikaku's chakra that was pulled out trembled slightly with fear and dread. What the hell is this psychic beast? It seems that the tailed beasts are afraid of it, and it gives off a very ominous feeling. Uchiha Itachi looked at the Gedomazo without a trace, secretly peeking at the huge body of the Gedomazo. The corner of his eyes glanced at the big mouth of the Gedomazo, and he felt like his soul was being swallowed. The members of the Akatsuki looked at this behemoth with interest. Obviously, they also noticed Shikaku's fear. This feeling of encountering a natural enemy really puzzled them. No one expected that this ugly big guy could make the tailed beasts afraid. This is a matter of course. With a mysterious smile, Dustless closed his eyes and concentrated on sealing the tailed beasts. Even if Ichibi had never seen the Gedomazo and didn't know what this thing was, there was an indescribable throbbing or fear in the depths of his soul. It's necessary to ask him. His doubtful eyes fell on Dustless, and Uchiha Itachi secretly decided in his heart. The place where his eyes were focused was Dustless's cheek, which always gave him a feeling that he knew everything. Pain just stood there silently, taking in the changes in everyone's expressions. Then he closed his eyes directly and continued to seal the tailed beasts. He didn't intend to explain. Time passed quickly, and the dark cave remained dark. No one knew how long it took, but the chakra of the tailed beast in the Gedomazo was getting more and more majestic, while the chakra fluctuation of the tailed beast in Gaara's body was getting smaller and smaller. The other side was also quickly preparing. As an ally of the sand, Konoha immediately sent ninjas to rescue the Kazekage Gaara. The performance of the other countries wasn't that great. The water country was fine. After all, Mei was the shadow of a village, and she came all the way here to support the Sand Hidden Village. This made the Sand Hidden Village feel honored and flattered. Of course, if the Sand knew that Terumi Mei came thousands of miles to collude with Dustless, they would probably vomit blood. As for the Cloud and the Rock, they naturally didn't deal with each other. It was understandable that they didn't like each other. After all, Anoki killed the third Raikage, the father of the fourth Raikage. Therefore, in the end, only Konoha of the Land of Fire made a substantial action. The other three countries were just watching on the sidelines. Terumi Mei only brought a few followers. The ninjas sent by Konoha to rescue Gaara were a joint team composed of Kakashi's Team 7, and Konoha's Blue Wolf Beast, Madogai's Team 3. Of course, this included Jiraiya from the Sand Hidden Village, as well as Chiyo, Gaara's sister and brother, Temari and Kankuro. It was rare to see such a luxurious lineup, and it was not difficult to see that an unprecedented battle was about to take place. Chapter 236. A steady stream of tailed beast power flowed into the Gedo Golem's body, replenishing its shriveled skin. The tightly closed eyes on its head slowly opened, revealing its ferocious eyeballs. It gave off a feeling that it had finally come back to life. Only Nibi's Jinchuriki and the other half of the Kyubi's chakra are left. Suddenly opening his eyes and staring at the eyes of the Gedomazo, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. After so many years of hard work, almost all the 9 bijou that were scattered around the world have been gathered. As long as he finds the last Nibi and the Kyubi's chakra, he can directly resurrect the Jubi. What is that kid Uchiha Obito thinking? I shouldn't have given him the Kyubi's chakra. It was my mistake. Thinking about it, Dustless's heart inevitably sank. Where is the Kyubi's chakra? Only Uchiha Obito knows. It may be in his Kamui dimension. Damn Obito. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind, and killing intent surged. Dustless scolded in his heart. You better not have any crooked thoughts, otherwise. For someone like Uchiha Obito, whose will is easily shaken, Dustless didn't want to believe him from the bottom of his heart. He was always on guard. In his opinion, people who can be defeated by Uzumaki Naruto are unreliable people. It seems to be over. Noticing that the tailed beasts in Gaara's body were almost exhausted, Dustless's exhaustion was swept away. Anyone would be physically and mentally exhausted if they just stood there and sealed the tailed beasts for several days. The ninjas of Sand Village and Konoha Village have come to rescue Gaara, and there are a lot of them. Ju's low and hoarse voice suddenly resounded. Previously, his doppelgangers were distributed in the surrounding area within a few kilometers, responsible for the seal's constant vigilance. Hearing this, the members of the Akatsuki who were sealing the bijou opened their eyes and frowned. The seal of the tailed beast still needs a lot of time. Those people are really persistent. Dustless could not help but feel speechless. This group of people really knew how to pick the right time. They did not come earlier or later. Instead, they appeared just a few hours before the seal was completed. Their timing was quite accurate. The spell I set up outside can hold them off for a while, but it shouldn't be able to hold them off for long. Pain's tone was also somewhat helpless. The time of the seal couldn't be interrupted, and Akatsuki didn't have extra manpower to resist them. The seal set up outside couldn't play a fundamental role. In particular, the ninjas who attacked this time were not rookies. Needless to say, Jiraiya and Chiyo, ninjas like Kakashi and Madogai are famous, and their strength can't be underestimated. Why don't we use that technique? There's no other way. Remembering the jutsu that Pain taught them in the past, Itachi suggested. At present, this was the only feasible plan. As for counting on White Zetsu's clone to fight the enemy, it was better to directly move the position. The technique mentioned by Itachi was naturally one of the forbidden techniques of Rinnegan, the powerful forbidden technique, Elephant Release Jutsu. After launching the Elephant Release Jutsu, others can get the same appearance as a specific person, and can use all the techniques of the specific person, including Kekkei Genkai, but only 30% of all the abilities of the main body. Actions are controlled by the main body, and the main body will lose self-consciousness forever. After the chakra is used up, the controlled body will die, and the original appearance will be restored after death. The viciousness of this technique is beyond doubt. It must use living people as sacrifices, and once the caster's chakra is exhausted, the so-called sacrifice will also completely disappear. That's the only way. Pain nodded in agreement. It was unrealistic to expect White Zetsu's clone to fight against the enemy. After all, the invaders this time are the elites of the two villages. They must take out elite troops to fight against the enemy. Let me, Master Haiden, clean them up and let those clowns know that Akatsuki can't be offended at will. When Pain was puzzled and didn't know who to choose to use the Elephant Release Jutsu, Haiden recommended himself, and his excited voice resounded throughout the cave. After nearly 2 days of continuous sealing, Haiden, who was active by nature, couldn't hold back anymore. He was eager to fight with the Sand Ninjas. I'm happy that you have this intention, but there is a more suitable candidate for this task. You continue to seal the tailed beast. Pain's gaze swept across Fei Duan's body. If Fei Duan had been quiet, he might have considered it. Now, seeing that Fei Duan was so reckless and was mainly venting for his own pleasure, Pain directly ignored him. Sealing the tailed beast naturally can't be wasted. This kind of serious problem is not considered by Haiden. Your IQ will only make the enemy break through faster, it won't play a role. Dedeo ridiculed the depressed Fei Duan in a strange tone. When he was about to recommend himself, a sharp pain suddenly came from his shoulder. Only then did he remember the injury of his broken arm a few days ago, and he also wisely shut his mouth. Itachi, Kisame, this task will be given to you too. After thinking for a while, Pain's eyes fell on Itachi and Kisame. In the Akatsuki organization, except for Dustless and Conan's Oracle combination, these two were the most trustworthy. Both Sasori and Deidara were injured, and they were definitely not suitable for this task. It seemed that the risk of this task was too great. Pain's eyes fell on Dustless again, and sighed. I also know that you spent a lot of effort to catch the Ichibi a few days ago, and now you have wasted a lot of effort to seal the tailed beast, but I still have to trouble you to go, Dustless. No problem. Dustless just smiled bitterly when he heard this. Pain's words had already reached this point, and there was no way to refuse. Besides, he really didn't trust Itachi and Kisame. The current situation has long been separated from the historical development in Dustless's memory. Maybe, just like when they were chasing the Ichibi, unknown factors like Terumi may will jump out. Chapter 237. Although in the memory of Dustless's previous life, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame still successfully completed the mission. When the ninjas of the two villages came, Gaara had already extracted his Jinchuriki and died. Most of the people of the Akatsuki organization also evacuated, leaving only Deidara and Sasori to stop them. But as the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. There are too many accidents in this world. It's not wrong to plan ahead. The leader is really making a big fuss. It's just a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Haydn shouted discontentedly. Obviously, he was very disappointed that Pain didn't choose him. He vented his dissatisfaction. For a battle maniac like Haydn, there was nothing more helpless than now. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Hearing this, Sasori, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Haydn in an unfriendly manner. He said sarcastically, "If a powerhouse like Jiraiya is a shrimp soldier, then I can tell you very responsibly that you are not even a waste." Sasori, who was usually silent, sneered. It was no wonder that he was so angry. He was just defeated by Jiraiya 2 days ago. Now Haydn jumped out and said that Jiraiya was a shrimp soldier and crab general not worth mentioning. Doesn't it mean that he was not even a waste in front of Jiraiya? It's ridiculous. Kisame is right. It's worthy of the zombie duo. It's really the kind of idiot with developed limbs. Deidara and Sasori rarely stood in the same trench. They both opened their mouths to Haydn, but Deidara did it more ruthlessly. He also brought the silent Kakuzu along. "Bastard, what did you say?" Kakuzu immediately glared at Deidara with fire in his eyes. At the same time, he secretly scolded Haydn for being an idiot. Every time he pulled him into trouble, he didn't forget to scrape Deidara fiercely, obviously warning him not to bring him along with him next time he attacked Haydn. "Enough, all of you shut up." A powerful voice spread out. It was Pain with a gloomy face. Murderous aura burst out of his body, which calmed the scene down. His gaze swept over Kakuzu, Deidara, and Haydn until the three of them had goosebumps all over their bodies. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. As for Dustless, Itachi, and Kisame, all three of them had finished casting their jutsu. "I just need to stall for a few hours." Pain vowed that a few hours of effort would be enough to strip the tailed beast, and then he would be able to retreat safely. How strange, the glint fruit's ability seems to be gone. Dustless's pupils contracted slightly when he sensed the abnormality in his body. He tried to activate the glint fruit's ability, but was shocked to find that it had failed. Of course, his body could still use it, but the body in front of him was temporarily unable to activate the glint fruit's ability. Forget it. Even if that's the case, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with them. With a sigh, Dustless decided not to dwell on it any further. Tailed beasts were important, and the glint fruit did not belong to the bloodline limit. Even if it did not exist in this temporary body, it was not a big deal. Soon, Dustless, Itachi, and Ghost Mermaid all disappeared from the cave. "Kakashi, the strength of that group of guys is unreliable. I heard that Jiraiya-sama was defeated by them." Between the lush forest, several black shadows were clearly visible. It was Team 7 led by Kakashi and Team 3 led by Guy. Kakashi nodded heavily when he heard the words. His mood was particularly depressed. Indeed, be careful, guy. Taking a deep breath, Kakashi said cautiously. This mission was more difficult than any mission he had carried out in the past. The enemy was not a single enemy, but the strongest organization composed of all S-class. Akatsuki, Sasuke's eldest brother and second brother, seemed to be in that organization. Uzumaki Naruto followed Kakashi and said in a heavy voice. His fists were sweating, and his blue eyes were faintly oozing dark red irregular blood. Obviously he was ready to kill. If it weren't for Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Dustless, Sasuke might not have defected from Konoha. It was all their fault. As for why Uzumaki Naruto knew about Dustless and Itachi's news, it was because Jiraiya had already told them about the Akatsuki organization. Naruto, now is not the time to be righteous. The focus is on the fifth Kazekage, not Sasuke. Seeing Uzumaki Naruto's murderous aura overflowing, Kakashi warned him in a rare tone. As a ninja, if you can't even figure out the nature of the mission, it's better to go home and retire. I understand, Kaka-sensei. Uzumaki Naruto's pupils dimmed, and the dense and oppressive murderous aura in his eyes disappeared. His mood was quite low, and he was silent. Obviously he still cared about Uchiha Sasuke. Obsession is too deep. Kakashi took back his gaze from Uzumaki Naruto and sighed. He knew that Sasuke's shadow had been imprinted in Naruto's heart forever. It was deeply rooted and could not be erased. The so-called fetter is actually a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's the source of power, giving people inexhaustible power. Sometimes it's also a nightmarish existence, and the shadow in the heart can never be waved away. A weak breeze came head-on, and the fallen dead leaves on the ground were rolled up like the autumn wind and blown to the sky. They were particularly weak and fragile, like a kite with a broken string. They could only drift with the wind. Seeing this scene, Kakashi's eyes flashed with confusion. Perhaps the will of fire may be like the fallen leaves in front of him, and there will be no place for him in the world after this. Don't be confused. I'm here to take you on the road of sublimation, the road to the gate of hell. A black figure descended from the sky. A man in a black trench coat slowly landed in front of Kakashi and the others. He wore a wooden bamboo hat, tied with a white ribbon, and tied with many bells. His face couldn't be seen clearly, but when the breeze blew, the bells would make a pleasant sound. Chapter 238. Kakashi and Mato Gai's pupils suddenly shrank, and they simultaneously stood in front of their subordinates, staring at the figure in front of them with awe-inspiring eyes. A black trench coat embroidered with red clouds, a cloak with bells, the fingernails of his thumb and toe were all dyed black and purple, especially the ninja headband with scratches on it. In the entire ninja world, only Akatsuki dressed like this. Long time no see, Kakashi. Raising his head, Dustless looked at Kakashi, who was wearing a mask. He slightly raised his hand, revealing a rather gentle smile, giving people the feeling of bathing in the spring breeze. His sunny face was approachable, as gentle as the morning sun. He didn't look like a member of the dark and ambitious organization, Akatsuki, at all. Dustless, it's you. Kakashi's eyes widened, looking at the familiar face in horror. Looking at Dustless's black trench coat, his eyes instantly became as cold as a knife. His eyes seemed to be able to cut people into pieces, very ferocious. Kakashi, don't show such a gloomy expression. We can sit down and chat. After all, we were comrades in arms in the past. Looking at the cautious Kakashi with a smile, Dustless restrained his aura. He didn't intend to fight with Kakashi, Guy and their subordinates. I also hope so, but I'm sorry, we still have a mission. Get out of the way, Dustless. Suppressing the violent tumbling in his heart, Kakashi said in a hoarse voice, while secretly gathering chakra in the palm of his right hand. He could vaguely feel the sharpness of chakra piercing through everything. Raish, looking at the palm of Kakashi, Dustless's eyes flashed with a trace of regret, sighed and said, Is that so? But I also have a mission, Kakashi, and the content of the mission is to stop your team 7 and 3. Then go to hell, Otama Rasengan. The orange figure swept straight out like a cannonball, passing by Kakashi's side, shuttling straight away, instantly in front of Dustless. The palm of his hand was impressively large chakra energy ball. Naruto, come back, that guy can ignore physical attacks. Kakashi cursed, hurriedly shouted at Uzumaki Naruto. The urgency in his tone could be heard by anyone. Dustless's strange ability to turn his whole body into light, Jiraiya also told him before coming. Kyuubi, didn't Jiraiya teach you that when adults are talking, children can't interrupt? Seeing Uzumaki Naruto appear in front of him, Wuxia couldn't help but frown, and his voice became cold. As for the super-large Rasengan that rushed over, he directly ignored it. His whole body was covered with a golden luster, and the hard and huge ribs suddenly wrapped Wuxia in layers, forming an absolute defense, watertight like an iron bucket. Boom. Boom. The blue energy ball suddenly burst, the gushing airwaves blew Uzumaki Naruto away, and the scattered strong impact blew the ground bare. Why didn't he use the trick that ignores physical attacks? Kakashi frowned. He thought that Dustless would directly use elementalization to directly ignore the Rasengan's attack, but he didn't expect that Dustless would choose to resist. Oh, burn youth. A very loud voice resounded behind Dustless. He turned his head and saw Madogai. After casually glancing at the hot-blooded watermelon head, Dustless directly ignored him and looked at Kakashi in front of him. I was underestimated. Madogai saw Dustless looking at Kakashi again, but he was not angry. He was born to be an optimistic person. There was no word discouraged in the dictionary of life, but it turned into a strong motivation. Strong and powerful legs wrapped around the blue chakra and swept straight toward Dustless in Kinsusanoo. Konoha Vajra Whirlwind. Wuxia seemed to be aware that the attack coming from behind was quite powerful. He turned his head again and looked at the powerful force that was whizzing towards him with interest. Good opportunity. Seeing Dustless's eyes focused on Madogai, Kakashi's eyes suddenly burst out, and at the same time, the silver light in his hand turned into irregular thunder and lightning, and rushed toward Dustless with all his strength. It seems that he wants to attack Dustless from the front and back. Boom boom boom. Two powerful forces suddenly hit Kinsusanoo's body, causing many cracks which continued to expand and gradually spread throughout Kinsusanoo, faintly showing signs of collapse. Did it succeed? Kakashi and Madogai looked at Kinsusanoo full of cracks, and when they thought that Kinsusanoo was about to burst, Dustless's harsh voice sounded. Do you still need to think? Of course it didn't succeed. The thin body erupted with strong chakra, and a steady stream of Kinsusanoo, and the cracks that had spread before were not only instantly repaired, but the golden giant became stronger and stronger. Boom. Boom. There were two consecutive dull loud noises, and there was a strange blood flower in the air. Then Madogai and Kakashi were seen flying backward, lying on the ground half dead and unable to move their bodies. Kinsusanoo's powerful force directly hit them and made them vomit blood, and their internal organs seemed to be dislocated. What a strong technique. Kakashi looked gloomily at Dustless inside Kinsusanoo, and an unprecedented sense of powerlessness suddenly rose in his heart, and his body was in pain, but the physical and mental devastation made him feel even more deeply. Kakashi, who was shrouded in the golden light of Kinsusanoo, felt a sense of depression and despair in the depths of his soul, making him unable to resist. Madogai was the same, and his mood was particularly depressed. It doesn't matter if he was defeated by the enemy, but if he was beaten by the enemy to the point that he couldn't resist, then it's another matter. Facing the godlike Uchiha Dustless in front of him, his heart was extremely heavy. Chapter 239. Dustless easily defeated Might Guy and Kakashi with his bare hands. It was like giving everyone a shot in the heart, including all the members of Team 7 and Team 3. They were all afraid of Dustless. Of course, there are exceptions to everything. The orange figure standing resolutely was particularly dazzling, attracting everyone's attention. This kid is really the biggest problem. Lowering his head, Wuxia looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who was half a head shorter than himself. Wuxia nodded slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. To be honest, he really has an indescribable curiosity about this boy with a charming personality. To some extent, this world is following Uzumaki Naruto's footsteps. Boy, why are you so obsessed with me? It's Itachi who slaughtered the Uchiha, and it's also him who killed Sasuke's parents. This matter seems to have nothing to do with me. You have no reason to kill me." The golden luster quickly disappeared, and the majestic and overbearing aura was restrained. With his hands in front of him, he stared at Uzumaki Naruto with deep and bright eyes, looking forward to his answer. "His parents? Aren't they your parents? Just how heartless can you be?" His huge fists were clenched tightly, his face was ferocious, and there was a faint red light behind him. For Uzumaki Naruto, who valued friendship, Dustless's words greatly stimulated him. Even because of excessive anger, the Kyuubi chakra in his body began to go berserk. The Uchiha family is a cursed family. The so-called brothers are just simple parts. Even parents are no exception. The Uchiha are born with ruthlessness, and they will die with ruthlessness. It's quite suitable for the Uchiha's ending. "Shut up, you bastard." Uzumaki Naruto's eyes were instantly swallowed by blood, and the chakra went berserk. His body roared like a cannonball, and sharp claws emerged from his 5 fingers, piercing straight towards Dustless's throat. "You're fast, but it's still not enough." With a sneer, Dustless sidestepped the sharp claws, and at the same time his strong and powerful right arm suddenly grabbed Uzumaki Naruto, and his body broke out with a force that directly pressed him to the ground. Boom! A huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground, and his palm was like a black hole, absorbing Uzumaki Naruto's Kyuubi chakra. Although I don't know how he did it, it seems that he can't ignore physical attacks anymore. Kakashi's pupils slightly narrowed, and the light in his eyes flashed. After careful observation, he found that Dustless used his body to resist the opponent's attacks, and he didn't use elementization to ignore the opponent's attacks as before. This way, it's not impossible. The despair in his heart disappeared, and Kakashi looked at Guy. Obviously, the latter also realized the loophole in Dustless's plan, and his eyes were filled with a beast-like luster. I was discovered. It's chakras chakra tensei's chakras, jutsu it jujitsu with jutsu, and jujitsu's jutsu, it jutsu jutsu's thesis ss. Let me go. Uzumaki Naruto, who was bound by Dustless, began to struggle violently, madly twisting his body, and a strong force resisted Dustless, trying to escape Dustless's shackles. However, Uzumaki Naruto helplessly found that the big hand on his head seemed to have the power of tens of thousands of pounds, and no matter how he resisted, he couldn't break free. The dazzling light coming from the front made Dustless's pupils suddenly shrank, and his brows slightly wrinkled. He slowly raised his head, and it was Kakashi and Raikiri in his hand. "You don't know what's good for you." A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and the cold air surged all over his body. The Scarlet Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was exposed to the air, and the evil eye power in the frame of the glasses began to rage. Wouch! Suddenly looking up, he saw a giant golden arm falling from the sky, like a falling meteorite, mercilessly smashing towards the stunned Kakashi. From the shape, color, and chakra fluctuation, it was undoubtedly Kinsusanoo, but it was localized. "I can't hide. It seems that I can only use that to devour him." Staring at the giant arm falling down, Kakashi's eyes flashed with determination, and the 3 Tomo Sharingan also turned into the same Manjikyu Sharingan as Uchiha Obito. "Leave it to me, Konoha's blue wolf beast Kakashi." Madogai looked at the falling giant arm eagerly, and there was no fear in his shining eyes, and his heart was boiling, and under everyone's surprised gaze he roared. "Sixth gate, open." Madogai's body suddenly flashed with the luster of emerald, and all aspects of his physical strength were strengthened several times in an instant. And because of the fast speed, Dustless could only catch an afterimage. Hashiman Tanku. Sure enough, it's an extremely dangerous technique. This is only the 6th gate, and it's so powerful. If the last gate is also opened. Thinking of this, Dustless unconsciously shuddered, and suddenly remembered the scene of Madara being beaten by Hashiman Guy. Although Madogai's performance was just a flash in the pan, it was enough to attract Dustless's attention. Super Peacock. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Madogai waved his fist, and a dense number of flaming fists came out of his hand, and the unprecedented number was overwhelming and dazzling. The endless flaming fists rushed straight to Kansusanu's arm in the sky. Bang bang bang. The two came into close contact, and Kansusanu's golden arm suddenly trembled fiercely, and the blazing fists were not only hot, but also very domineering, and directly broke the localized Kansusanu's arm. Damn bastard, I ignored such a dangerous person. Dustless's face was gloomy, although there was an essential difference between the localized Kansusanu and the complete body, and the power and defense were even more of a qualitative difference. But it was so easy to break it, which showed the horror of the Hashiman Tanku, or it showed that Madogai was extraordinary. Chapter 240. Uzumaki Naruto also took advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Dustless's shackles, and quickly pulled away from Dustless. This group of guys can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Kakashi is the same, Uzumaki Naruto is also the same. Konoha's Ashwolf is extremely dangerous. Although there was still a relaxed smile on his face, Dustless's heart was actually tense. Glint glinting fruit can still be used, but now he can't use it for the time being, and he no longer has the powerful advantage of being immune to physical attacks. The most fatal thing is that this temporary body only has 30% of the strength of the main body. It may be enough to deal with others, but Dustless always felt that it's not enough to deal with the three people in front of him. Especially after witnessing the horror of Hashiman Tanku, Dustless was even more worried. Just opening the 6th gate, Madogai is already so terrifying. After completely opening the 8th gate, he can even compete with Otsutsuki Kagaya. Even if it's just a flash in the pan. As long as I can deal with the three people in front of me, as for the others, it's not a big deal. Looking at Haruno Sakura and the members of the 3rd squad, Dustless secretly thought to himself. He directly ignored them. These people were quite sensible. They knew that it was not a battle of the same level, so from the beginning, they hid far away to watch the battle. Guy, Dustless's goal may be the Kyuubi in Naruto's body, we must protect him. His eyes were focused on Dustless. Due to high tension, Kakashi's hair was covered with sweat, and his clothes were all soaked with sweat. Although the ultimate goal of Akatsuki is unclear, it is undoubtedly related to the Bijou, and their goal naturally includes Uzumaki Naruto. He's coming, Kakashi. Seeing Kakashi absent-mindedly thinking about other things, Madogai's loud voice reminded him, like a rolling thunder, pulling Kakashi out of his contemplation. Slightly stunned, Kakashi subconsciously raised his head. So fast! His pupils suddenly shrank. Dustless had completed the hand seals in the blink of an eye, and a wide range of flames whizzed toward him. The strength of these three brothers was not only incredible, but their speed of forming hand seals was also impeccable. Kakashi thought that Uchiha Itachi was the fastest, but now it seems that Dustless was even faster. The dynamic ability of the eyeballs could not even keep up with Dustless's speed of forming hand seals, and all he could see were blurry afterimages. Fire style, grand fire annihilation. The crimson wave of fire came straight at them. Its range was frighteningly large, with a diameter of more than 20 meters. It was like a huge wave that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The sky was dyed a fiery red, and it was exceptionally magnificent and dazzling. There was simply no way to retreat. This guy is really terrifying. He can use Katon to this extreme. It's obviously an A-class Katon, but he can exert the power of an S-class ninjutsu. Kakashi and Madogai looked at each other, and they could see the disbelief and astonishment in each other's eyes. It's not difficult for anyone to exert the power of a fixed-class ninjutsu. There's no free time to dodge. It seems that I can only take it head-on. After calculating the possibility of avoiding, Kakashi's eyes were immediately replaced by determination. The scarlet three tomo twisted together, and the power of his eyes was several times stronger than the previous three tomo state. His pupils focused on the incoming wave of fire, and the messy blood spread throughout his pupils like a spider web. Buzz! The void suddenly trembled, making bursts of sorrowful cries, as if the end of the world was coming. The sky began to collapse, and everything in the world also showed signs of collapse. Looking up at the sky, only to see the endless sky violently and madly distorted, blurred like a paste, very sticky, like a swamp, stirring up the terrifying devouring power. The monstrous wave of fire suddenly became weak and fragile. From the fierce wolf just now to a soft sheep, like a lonely boat in a storm, in the blink of an eye, it was wiped out by the majestic devouring power, as if nothing had happened. The void that was dyed fiery red was restored to a clear sky again. Only the residual heat in the air proved that a thrilling confrontation had happened before. Kakashi, this is, looking at the flame group that was instantly devoured, Mato-Gai's throat unconsciously choked. Even if he was not the target of Kakashi's ninjutsu, he felt a devouring wave that made his heart palpitate. It seemed to be a deep-sea behemoth in the depths of the void, without a physical body, without a trace, but it was real. The moment it opened its bloody mouth, it could annihilate any existence in the world. Dustless also looked at the scene in front of him incredulously. The huge spatial fluctuations could be felt by people, especially him in the center of it. A mere outsider can use the Manjikyu Sharingan so skillfully, worthy of a genius ninja. Dustless, who recovered from the shock, nodded slightly and praised Kakashi without hesitation. Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan is Obito's, but its ability seems to be different. Obito's Manjikyu Sharingan can only passively defend at present, but Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan belongs to the offensive type, which can distort space and time. Staring at the pale and sweating Kakashi, Dustless's performance was indifferent. This was expected. The Uchiha clan's burden of using the Manjikyu Sharingan is great, and Kakashi, who doesn't have Uchiha blood, is naturally more burdened. Kakashi, according to your physical fitness, you can use this jutsu 3 or 4 times at most. Dustless looked at Kakashi calmly and said calmly, the consumption of Kamui is great, whether it's the amount of chakra or the spiritual power, the more powerful the jutsu, the greater the cost. This is the truth of the ancient times. Dustless's words naturally attracted the attention of Mato-Gai and Uzumaki Naruto. They looked at Kakashi, who had a hunched back, as if all the bones in his body were sucked out, and he was gasping for breath, and their eyes were filled with worry. Ah, what a touching bond. In that case, I will send you to the underworld to continue your destiny. Chapter 241. Unprecedented exhaustion spread through his nerve endings to all parts of his body. Kakashi's body was dizzy and almost fell down. If it wasn't for his strong belief, he might have already fainted. It's not that easy to kill us, Dustless. Slowly standing up, Kakashi said, not to be outdone. Especially after seeing that Dustless could only rely on defense to defend against their attacks, and couldn't use elementization like before, his confidence suddenly rose. The most troublesome elementization was no longer possible, but there was still a chance of winning. Your confidence is not small, then I want to see how you resist. A sneer appeared on his calm face, and his quiet eyes shot out cold killing intent. Dustless's body instantly lost its texture, like a space ninjutsu. Damn, why is his speed still so fast? With a haze on his face, Kakashi's heart fell to the bottom. Under the observation of his Sharingan, he saw a black shadow whistling in a straight line. It could no longer be described as fast. Guy, who opened the 6th gate, apparently also noticed Dustless's attack. His spirit was tense, and the emerald green light on the surface of his body became stronger, flashing with dazzling brilliance. Strong and powerful iron fists danced, and countless flaming fists whistled out. Morning Peacock. Groups of flaming iron fists rushed straight forward, and the degree of power gathered was enough to crush a mountain. The power is extraordinary. Dustless's mouth raised into a smile, and instead of slowing down, he sped up. At the same time, his scarlet Sharingan rapidly turned, reflecting an extremely evil eye power, completely different from Kakashi's. The focus of his eyes was the group of flaming fists. Amaterasu. The dark flame that seemed to come from hell suddenly burned, and countless flaming fists were instantly swallowed by the black flame. And in just a moment, they were all annihilated. In the endless sky, only the black ghost fire was left. Failed, but with the black flame blocking, it seems that he can't directly pass through. Carefully observing the black Amaterasu, Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief. Although Mike Guy's trick was broken, The black flame in front of him was harmful to both him and Dustless couldn't directly pass through. Can't come over? Are you kidding me, Kakashi? The burning black hellfire suddenly trembled and rippled like a water surface. It was slightly distorted. Immediately, a small whirlpool appeared on the boiling Amaterasu Inferno barrier. The whirlpool continued to expand until it formed a hole. Dustless directly passed through it. Dustless's eternal Mangekyo does not have the ability to control Amaterasu, but in the past he defeated Uchiha Sasuke and took his abilities, including Sasuke's ability to control Amaterasu. Controlling the form of Amaterasu is just one of my many abilities. Seeing Kakashi's sluggish face, Wuxia explained softly. At the same time, the eternal kaleidoscope rotated, and the eye power fluctuated. The black willow. The wisps behind him seemed to be attracted by the god of fire, and they collapsed and disappeared without a trace. This guy's strength is on a completely different level from ours. Despair appeared in his dark blue eyes. Uzumaki Naruto stared at the approaching Dustless in horror. He instinctively took a step back, his face full of fear. With every step Dustless took, Uzumaki Naruto's powerlessness and despair became stronger. His bones seemed to be numb, and he couldn't resist at all. The most frustrating thing in the world is this situation. The enemy is in front of you, but you can't take revenge. Even the most important thing is to face the enemy's trampling. Kid, you seem to be in trouble. As the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, you are so afraid of the enemy. It really makes this old man feel ashamed. A hoarse and gloomy voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The vicissitudes of life brought endless contempt and ridicule. In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, the nine-tailed orange fox's voice spread to the sky. Smelly fox, shut up for me. Uzumaki Naruto also chose to ridicule him. His tone was hysterical, and his eyes were scarlet, filled with strong hostility. Good eyes, kid, you finally look like the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Lying on the ground leisurely, Kyuubi raised his eyelids. His deep eyes seemed to penetrate Uzumaki Naruto's body, and stared at Uchiha Dustless in the outside world. His eyes were full of wisdom. After closing his eyes and pondering for a moment, when he opened his bloody eyes again, his face was full of determination. Kid, I can lend my strength to you. In your dreams, your chakra will affect my mind. Don't even think about it. Uzumaki Naruto immediately denied it. Jiraiya once told him that once Kyuubi swallowed his mind, he would destroy and kill regardless of friend or foe. Is that so? But right now, you don't seem to have any other choice except to accept my strength. Kyuubi narrowed his eyes and felt the evil chakra in Dustless's pupils. His soul was palpitating. The ominous chakra was even more evil than him. It happened to be the same as Uchiha Madara. Don't worry, I won't control your mind. This guy in front of you is your enemy, and also my enemy. Although I don't know what you want to do with the tailed beast, it won't be a good thing. And you don't want to watch your sensei and friends get killed directly by this kid, Kyuubi said. His tone didn't have the killing intent and hatred in the past. It was rare to have a little more human feeling, and it always gave a much softer feeling. Uzumaki Naruto's heart was deeply touched, especially Kyuubi's last sentence. If he doesn't have the power to subdue Dustless, his sensei and friends will be completely killed. Uzumaki Naruto's reverse scale is his friend. Anyone who dares to trample on it, he will fight with his life on the line. Smelly fox, I will accompany you this time. Chapter 242. It's no wonder that Uzumaki Naruto and Kyuubi colluded with each other. In the face of Dustless, the unprecedented mountain, both of them were overwhelmed. Anyone with a little brain would choose to join forces, not to mention the scheming Kyuubi. In the face of absolute interests, there is no hatred that can't be resolved, especially at this moment of life and death. Golden chakra spread all over his body, full of vitality, like the warm sunshine in the cold winter, unusually serene, and the warm luster was very lazy. Unlike Kyuubi's previous chakra, which was full of evil and hatred, Uzumaki Naruto, who was surrounded by golden light at this time, gave a feeling of extraordinarily approachable, but it was obviously Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto, you, Madogai and Kakashi looked at each other, and they could see the horror and disbelief in each other's eyes. Especially Matogai's eyes almost popped out, looking at Uzumaki Naruto as if he saw a ghost. There is no doubt that the chakra in front of them belongs to Kyuubi, but it's completely opposite to Kyuubi's evil chakra. The golden chakra on Uzumaki Naruto's body is extraordinarily peaceful. This form is Kyuubi's trick? Dustless's face stiffened, and his eyes fell from Kakashi to Uzumaki Naruto. The corner of his mouth twitched without a trace, staring at the new form of Uzumaki Naruto, and his face became gloomy. On Uzumaki Naruto's face, 6 beard-shaped veins turned black, and his hair rose to form the shape of 2 horns. His clothes were black, and a white magatama appeared at the collar, and it was a golden chakra coat. Damn beast, do you think I can't do anything to you like this? A cold smile came from Dustless's mouth, and his pupils surged with monstrous hostility. It seems that the pressure on Kyuubi was too great, so this old guy had to lend his chakra to Uzumaki Naruto. And it was the kind that didn't hold back at all. However, what Dustless didn't expect was that just by lending his chakra to Uzumaki Naruto, this kid's appearance changed so much. Sure enough, this boy is the child of prophecy. It is not nonsense. Coupled with Otsutsuki's identity as the reincarnation of Azura, God will not let him be immortal. Dustless's pupils shrank slightly as he thought to himself. Although Uzumaki Naruto is now a scumbag, his strength in the later stage is obvious to all. It is entirely due to the Kyuubi in his body and Otsutsuki's identity as the reincarnation of Azura. Of course, it has a lot to do with his hard work. It wasn't hard to see that this world was actually a place where bloodlines mattered. Gru. Naruto, your current state is. Kakashi-sensei, I feel pretty good. My body is filled with boundless power. I can easily smash him into pieces with a single punch. Uzumaki Naruto's cat face showed a look of enjoyment. He felt the huge chakra in his body involuntarily moving his muscles and bones, and there was a bone-cracking sound. It seems that he is not controlled by the bijou, and this huge chakra was given to him by Kyuubi. Seeing this, Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief, and the rock blocking his chest finally fell down. With a smile on his face, he teased Dustless. Although I don't know what happened to Kyuubi and Naruto, it's all thanks to you, Dustless. It's not difficult to see that Kyuubi was afraid of Dustless's huge pressure, so he cooperated with the human he hated and lent his almost endless chakra to Uzumaki Naruto to resist Dustless. Don't you think it's ridiculous to think that you can control the battle with just a sealed bijou, Kakashi? Looking faintly at Uzumaki Naruto, who was desperately leaking golden chakra, Dustless shook his head, and the corner of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. Even if he was defeated, as long as he could hold these people before the chakra was exhausted, and by enough time for the sealed bijou, it would be a victory. What's more, Dustless also wanted to see what kind of ability Uzumaki Naruto had in this mode. Ah, the movement over there is really big. It seems that monsters are gathering there. Hoshigaki Kisame and Itachi frowned when they saw the energy fluctuations in the air, especially Hoshigaki Kisame. The shark's face was full of curiosity. The sudden eruption of chakra just now gave him great pressure. That endless chakra was not something that humans could have. Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame were naturally facing Jiraiya, Chio, and the sand-hidden village's ninja. Don't worry about the movement over there. Just complete Pain's task with peace of mind. His eyes fell on Jiraiya, and the waves in Itachi's eyes returned to calmness. Obviously, he wasn't calm either. The intense fluctuations over there could be clearly felt even several kilometers away. It was enough to show how terrifying the collision in the center of the confrontation was. Jiraiya also looked at the distant sky with a heavy expression. The horrifying moving fluctuations made him feel powerless, and the chakra scattered all over the void made him feel even more terrified. Even if Jiraiya went over there, he couldn't change the reality. Let me see what's the difference between you and the bijou. With a cold smile, Dustless's chakra began to rage. Even if this temporary body only had 30% of the strength of the original body, the chakra contained in it was comparable to the bijou. For peerless heroes like Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the chakra in their bodies was even better than the bijou. The golden brilliance covered Dustless, and the evil chakra was like the incarnation of disaster. It was completely opposite to the peaceful chakra of Uzumaki Naruto. It seemed to be the origin of evil. The origin of evil. An awe-inspiring momentum floated out of Dustless's body, overbearing and peerless like tens of thousands of sharp knives. All the ground under Dustless's feet turned into smoke. The substantialized chakra became more and more solid and majestic. A number of dense bones and human tendons quickly formed. The body expanded and rose without limit, covering the sky and the sun. The endless void was suddenly covered by shadows, and the ground reflected a ferocious giant with the Tengu armor. Chapter 243. Both Madogai and Kakashi widened their eyes and looked at the tall and straight body in disbelief. They couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority in their hearts, as if they were worthless like scraps of paper in an instant, extraordinarily small. The golden giant's whole body exuded an indescribable charm. Its scarlet eyes were wide open, looking down at the sky, and the mountains were small. Wherever its gaze swept, the focus of its sight was faintly collapsing, especially the sense of oppression around the giant's body, which crushed the 3 souls and 7 spirits of human beings. Even if the giant was the incarnation of God, no one would doubt it. The burly figure seemed to be endowed with life, and it roared towards the sky. Even if the 2 slender katanas on its waist had not been unsheathed, it also revealed the strength of cutting off all things in the world, writing its own invincible legend of fighting against the heavens. All in all, this should not be a technique controlled by humans. However, such an unprecedented ninjutsu was controlled by humans, and the figure in the golden frame on the top of Kansusanu's head was even more despairing. Who else could it be but Dustless? The golden substantialized chakra has stabilized. What kind of monster is this? The giant stared at the tall and straight giant in disbelief. The one-eyed Mangekyo Sharingan locked on the chakra giant's body, and after a careful observation, his expression changed dramatically. The giant in front of him was a monster that was endowed with life. It was the combination of super chakra. Kakashi's eyes were dull, and the words that came to the corner of his mouth stopped. His heart was like the sea, and at this moment, there were no words that could describe the shock in his heart. Especially bathed in the luster of the giant's body, his heart was crushed countless times, and the confidence that he had built up with great difficulty was once again ground to pieces. There's no need to be surprised. This is the Kansusanu that I've deliberately compressed. Otherwise, my physique would have increased by at least a third. Seeing the despair on the faces of Kakashi and the others, Dustless muttered to himself indifferently. The ultimate form Kansusanu in front of him was only 50 to 60 meters tall. If he were to release chakra without holding back, he would be 100 meters tall. After all, his body had undergone the elephant rotation technique. Even if the chakra was still huge, it would not be able to withstand unlimited squandering. Also, the strength of Kansusanu was determined by one's eye power. There's no need to worry about Kakashi. My burning youth will not be defeated by this big fool. Konoha's gray wolf will completely bloom. Let his most magnificent scene shine throughout the world, forever immortal. Looking at the giant chakra in high spirits, Madogai said with a smile of exultation. The decisiveness in his words and the tone of going all out made people's expressions change slightly. Kai, are you planning to use that? Absolutely not. Kakashi, who was in a daze, immediately recovered and denied with an unquestionable tone. The burning youth, that guy said, was at the cost of his life. He would never allow it. What a powerful technique, but I'm not afraid of you. The chakra on Uzumaki Naruto's body also shone brightly. The dazzling brilliance covered the sky. The golden afterglow sprinkled all over the sky, penetrating the endless space and time. The majestic and infinite chakra overflowed from his body, and the momentum was monstrous, spreading to every corner of the void. The golden chakra that erupted from Uzumaki Naruto's body quickly gathered and formed a huge body. It was also a high-density chakra. Could it be that Dustless, who was in the ultimate body Kansusanu, was slightly gloomy? His expression seemed a little depressed and terrifying. He stared at the chakra that burst out of Uzumaki Naruto's body, and his thoughts began to become active. Good luck, I didn't expect QB to be able to bury the hatchet with him. But I didn't expect QB, who hates humans so much, to be enlightened. The world is unpredictable. With a faint gentle smile, Dustless sighed and shook his head helplessly. Then he calmly looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who was spewing out chakra. His eyes were full of expectation. After all, there will be a day when he will fight with Uzumaki Naruto in the future. It's a good choice to test his strength now. A whoa. The excited sound of a beast coming out of the cage spread, containing the powerful chakra, like a hurricane. The violent chakra directly flattened the ground. Yes, I should be happy. After being imprisoned for so long, I finally came out to breathe fresh air. It's indeed a happy thing, QB. Seeing QB's chakra raging in the endless sky, venting his joy of breaking out of the cage, Dustless's pupils suddenly narrowed. But it's a pity that I'm going to be beaten to hell as soon as I get out of the cage. Sad. Looking at it, Uzumaki Naruto's body was magnified hundreds of times. Or it was no longer his body, but QB's body. The only difference is that this is not QB's body, but his body composed of chakra. It's QB's chakra mode. What a pure chakra. QB condensed chakra mode. Dustless secretly nodded. In the combination of QB and Naruto, there are no impurities in the chakra. It's as pure as spotless snow. Compared to QB, who is synonymous with destruction, QB at this moment is like a savior shining in the darkness. This is really an unexpected development. Kakashi and Guy looked at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. I'm afraid no one thought that one day, they would fight side by side with the legendary Bijou supremacy. Aolo! An ear-piercing roar resounded through the clouds. The powerful airwaves were so powerful that they easily turned the clouds in the sky into nothingness. Then the huge evil sphere quickly gathered. This is the first move, it's really merciless. Cautiously looking at the giant Bijudama in front of him, Dustless also moved his mind, and Kinsusanoo also pulled out the golden tachi hanging on his waist. Looking at this, Dustless intends to fight the Bijudama head-on. He has no intention to escape. Of course he can't avoid it, after all, he has temporarily lost the glinting fruit ability. He can't avoid physical attacks. Chapter 244. Along with the unsheathing of the ultimate form Kinsusanoo's katana, the earth was invisibly shrouded in a haze. Every living being's head seemed to be shrouded by a blade. The golden katana flickered with a dazzling brilliance, and the light reflected on the ground faintly seemed to want to directly split the earth into pieces. The power is not bad. I'm afraid it belongs to the extreme Bijudama. It should be at the level of Super S rank. Dustless nodded inwardly. QB was worthy of being called the most powerful and heaven-defying existence among the tailed beasts. He still clearly remembered that QB had once fought against 5-tailed beasts with its Bijudama alone. However, it's only SOO. A frivolous smile appeared on his heavy face. Dustless indifferently closed his eyes. The ultimate form Kinsusanoo also raised the katana of light high up. What was cut off wasn't just a blade of grass, but the whole world. Under everyone's horrified gaze, the katana of light in the hands of the ultimate form Kinsusanoo directly descended. The simple blade suddenly surged with a huge slash, tyrannically sweeping away all obstacles. Like an unbridled hurricane, it shook the earth. The swaying surface of the earth seemed to have experienced a magnitude 10 earthquake, trembling violently. Gazing afar, the slash thrown out by Kinsusanoo's katana covered the sky and covered the earth. The invincible power vividly expressed the meaning of the word destruction. Ka ka ka. The ground was brutally torn apart by the tyrannical power. The cracks reaching a depth of several tens of meters extended forward without limit. Everything that came in contact with Kinsusanoo's slash was forcibly erased, so much so that there was no trace of its existence. It was as if it had evaporated into thin air. Shio shio shio. At the same time, Chakra's transformation into a 9-tailed Bijudama was also completed. The high-speed rotating Bijudama threw out a powerful air wave, destroying the surrounding terrain. The distant mountains were swallowed up and annihilated by the air wave thrown out by the Bijudama. Whoosh whoosh. The dark chakra energy ball was mercilessly flung out, tearing apart the surface of the ground along its path. Long and narrow trenches were formed on the ground as it flew straight towards the incoming blade wind. The sky was filled with a mournful buzzing sound. Time froze at this moment. Boom, boom, boom. The two destructive attacks inevitably came into contact with each other. The void suddenly trembled violently and started to distort. Suddenly, a blazing fireball soared up and instantly ignited the void. The horrifying fire burned up to a height of a few hundred meters in the sky. The ground within a radius of several kilometers collapsed and sank, as if it had been attacked by an enraged god. The entire ground caved in. Damn it! What the hell is going on outside? Are the tailed beasts fighting? Everyone who was sealing Akatsuki opened their eyes. The intense tremor just now made the entire cavern tremble. Even Fei Duan, who was dozing off, almost fell down from the ghetto devil statue. He immediately roared furiously. It seems that they are in trouble. I didn't expect the characters this time to be so extraordinary. Seal the tailed beasts as soon as possible. Tendo Pain, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. Even if the shock in his eyes was well concealed, his astonishment and disbelief could be seen. The scope of this battle had made him feel powerless. The nine-tailed Jinchuriki is really not an ordinary person. Dustless's body opened his eyes, and a heavy and oppressive voice resounded throughout the dark cave. It seemed to be full of magic that had not dissipated. Don't worry about these problems. Hold them back for a while. After sealing the tailed beasts, we will move to another location. Pain did not intend to fall out with them. After capturing Nibi's Jinchuriki, it was not difficult to gather all the members of Akatsuki to capture Kyubi. He deserves to be the supreme overlord of the tailed beasts. Just the yang attribute of chakra is so powerful. If he gathers both attributes, not many people can be his opponent. Dustless frowned and looked at the sinking ground. Kyubi's strength came from his majestic chakra. The reason why Uchiha Madara could tame Kyubi was because his Sharingan could control the tailed beasts. Otherwise, it would take a lot of effort even if he could win against Kyubi in a one-handed fight. Kyubi was also the most powerful tailed beast. If he only used brute force, even if he could beat Madara, it would definitely take him a lot of effort. Boom! The sound of the ground shattering suddenly came from the front. Raising his head, he saw a golden nine-tailed figure whizzing towards him like lightning. Its four powerful limbs were filled with explosive power, and with a single leap, it was able to cover a distance of tens of meters. What a fast speed! Seeing this, Dustless's pupils shrank. This Kyubi was similar to his Kinsusinu, but there was a gap in speed. His perfect maneuverability was much better than Kinsusinu. Ow! 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 In less than a few seconds, Kyubi's golden body rushed to Kinsusinu's side, and he bit Kinsusinu's head with his fangs. It seemed that he wanted to tear Dustless into pieces. Come on, idiot! Dustless's face showed a cold, killing intent. At the same time, Kinsusinu's third arm behind him bombarded Kyubi's face mercilessly. Whoosh! Uzumaki Naruto's body spewed out a golden chakra hand, nimbly blocking the golden giant fist, trying to prevent Kinsusinu from attacking Kyubi. Boom! The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. The golden chakra hand was easily broken. Good job! Kyubi was not angry but smiled. He reacted quickly and immediately dodged Kinsusinu's attack. Although Uzumaki Naruto's attack failed, it bought him enough time. His hands tightly grasped the ultimate form Susanu's arm, and the nine tails behind him gathered a black energy ball, and directly whizzed towards Dustless, who was on top of Susanu's head. Chapter 245. In such a short distance, it's impossible to defend, and Susanu's movement ability is not flexible. So when the small Baijidama was sprayed towards Wuchin, it was already destined that Wuchin could only resist this fatal attack. The weakness of any creature is the head, and Kinsusinu is the same, especially Dustless in the golden frame Kinsusinu's head, which is particularly fragile. Kyubi also took the opportunity to jump more than 10 meters away, his body condensed into a golden sphere to resist the impact of the Bijidama. This old fox who has lived for thousands of years really became a demon, very cunning. looking at the roaring black energy sphere. Dustless was unusually calm. His eyes were staring at the Bijadama that was smashing towards him. He sighed helplessly, his eyes were cold. The chakra in Dustless's body surged again. All the pores on his body opened. Rich and abundant chakra erupted again. The ultimate body Consisinu flashed with a dazzling luster. The chakra gushing out of Dustless's body filled Consisinu. Is it possible that he wants to grow bigger? QB was stunned looking at Consisinu absorbing Dustless's chakra. His blood-red pupils were filled with horror. This terrifying ultimate body Consisinu is already 50 or 60 meters high. And now it seems that he wants to grow bigger. Bastard, is this technique limitless? Uzumaki Naruto, who was hiding in QB's mouth, also realized that something was wrong, and suddenly cursed. He could clearly feel that Consisinu was constantly growing his body. Even QB, a peerless beast who has lived for thousands of years, was sluggish. His face was gloomy and inconceivable. Consisinu's golden body suddenly flashed with a dazzling luster. The tall body suddenly surged. Layer upon layer of chakra went straight into the sky, and under everyone's horrified gaze, it once again surged to a height of 30 or 40 meters. It reached a height of 100 meters. Damn, the consumption is really too much. This temporary body is really not useful. Perceiving the rapid depletion of chakra in his body, Dustless couldn't help but frown. At the same time, he quickly decided to end this boring task. The depletion of chakra means that the elephant rotation jutsu will end here. Looking at the small Bijadama flying towards him, Dustless didn't care. Consisinu's katana of light also went straight towards the sphere. Boom boom boom. The blazing flames instantly swallowed Consisinu. The high-density chakra condensed Bijadama directly exploded. Consisinu's 100-meter-tall body was completely destroyed by the flames. Fragile. With a sneer, the huge golden body walked out of the flames and stood under the sunlight as if nothing had happened. As long as the huge body took a light step, the entire ground would sway as if it was dancing, stirring up sand and gravel that was 10 feet high. This guy really can't be measured by common sense. This evil eye fluctuation has surpassed Uchiha Madara's. Judging from the scale of Consisinu, he has completely become a surpasser, breaking the curse of Uchiha Madara on the Uchiha clan, and becoming the only person who has surpassed him in 100 years. QB's thoughts fell into memories again. He was tamed by Uchiha Madara, and was controlled by him to fight the god of shinobi, Hashirama. QB still can't forget the past. Uchiha Madara was like a curse in QB's heart, and today, it was finally successfully broken. Dustless has surpassed him. I can only take a gamble. QB's scarlet eyes were filled with madness. He said hoarsely. It's impossible to let Dustless put a collar on him. He can only give it a try. I won't let this guy kill my companions. Uzumaki Naruto in the QB's mouth clenched his fists tightly, and didn't relax until he was sweating. His tone was also hysterical and crazy. It's bad. It seems that Naruto and QB are not his opponents. Kakashi, who was watching in the distance, suddenly calmed down. Before it was a 50-50 outcome, but now Dustless's body suddenly rose 30 or 40 meters high. The scale of victory has faintly tilted to Dustless's side. Being 30 to 40 meters taller didn't just mean that he was taller. His body's strength and attack power had increased by a lot. At least I can do something, Kakashi said in a stern tone. After a rest, the side effects of using Kamui have been minimized, and his body is as good as new, and Manjikyu Sharingan can still be used. Staring at the 100-meter-high materialized chakra giant, his eyes focused again, and his eyes were firm. Kakashi, leave it to me. As long as I use that, I can kill that kid in an instant. Locking his eyes on Kakashi's eyes, Guy said. Even if you continue to use dojutsu, you may not be able to defeat Dustless. Enough, Guy. No matter what, I still want to try. This time I will use all my strength. Not waiting for Guy to refute his words, Kakashi's pupils stared at Consisinu's huge body. Such a huge body doesn't need to be precise. It's easy to attack him. Spiderweb-like blood vessels spread throughout the eyeball, and the space-time around Dustless Susanoo suddenly distorted. The surrounding void was like a spring in the deep sea, and it began to distort violently, full of irresistible gravity. as if he came to the depths of the universe. And if he is not careful, he will step into a place of eternal damnation. Is it Obito's Kamui again? Damn Kakashi! Kinsusanu's body suddenly stopped, and his feet fell on the ground fiercely, and the ground suddenly flew up. His eyes looked at the distorted space around him, and Dustless's hair stood on end. If he is swallowed by Kamui, there is no turning back. Chapter 246. The 100-meter-tall Kinsusanu blotted out the sky and covered the earth. The tachi in his hand was sharp and invincible. As long as the cold light swayed gently, the earth shook, and the sun and the moon lost their light. However, in the face of this strange space fluctuation, he was helpless and fell into a passive defense. Looking straight at the void in front of him, the space and time in front of him were completely distorted, and an irresistible gravity swept through his body. Dustless was stunned to find that the distorted space in front of him seemed to be swallowing the whole Kinsusanu. It's not good to be swallowed by that, but Kakashi is really desperate. Staring at the violently distorted void in front of him, Dustless was particularly cautious, and his eyes were carefully looking at the different space of Kamui. The other side seemed to be the depths of the vast universe, and once swallowed, there was no turning back. The Sharingan didn't belong to Kakashi, so it was naturally more laborious to use than Obito. Especially releasing Kamui over such a large area naturally consumed a lot of chakra, and now Kakashi was obviously risking his life. An unprecedented swallowing came, and the whole sky was as fragile as paper, and it was broken by a poke. Ka. The sound of bones breaking suddenly sounded, and an unparalleled swallowing force came from behind. Kinsusanu's third arm was directly twisted into pieces by Kamui. The hideous wound was uneven like being bitten by a beast. It's a pity, Kakashi. Dustless and Kinsusanu smiled and looked at Kakashi in the distance, whose pupil was bleeding. This was the essential gap. Kakashi's pupil power was limited, and he wasn't a member of the Uchiha clan. It was unrealistic to think that Kamui could swallow the ultimate body of Kinsusanu with only one eye. Any technique has its limit, and anything beyond the limit can't be shaken. Although an arm was twisted, it's not a big deal. You still don't have any advantage. Kamui's voice resounded through the sky. The space around Kinsusanu was still distorted, but it was far less than before. It could only tear Kinsusanu's majestic body, but it couldn't attack directly like before. Obviously, the attack that tore off Kinsusanu's arm had consumed all his pupil power. Kakashi was not Obito, and compared to Obito, who had 3 Tomo Sharingan, he was too far behind. Obito not only had the blood of the Uchiha clan, but the most important thing was that Hashirama's cells, which greatly reduced the burden on his body and mind. The eyes that surpassed the 3 Tomo Sharingan aren't something that he can control. Madogai's expression was heavy, and his voice was hoarse. Kakashi's eyes were bloodshot, and his pupils had turned blood red. There were dark red bloodstains at the corners of his eyes. Just now when he used his dojutsu to crush Susanu's arm, the blood in his eyes even fell like rain. Ouch! Seeing that Dustless and Kinsusanu were still limited by space, Kyubi immediately seized the golden opportunity. His big mouth full of fangs suddenly opened, and a huge Bijidama appeared in the air. The high-density chakra contained in it was even larger than the previous Bijidama. You're really a fox, you really know how to seize the opportunity. Dustless frowned at this moment. He was still limited by Kamui. Kinsusanu's majestic body was almost under the control of Kamui, and he couldn't move nimbly. He was like a giant target that couldn't move. But do you think I can't do anything to you? You can't underestimate me like this. The Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is just one of my many abilities. It's ridiculous to think that the ultimate body Kinsusanu is my trump card. Looking at Kyubi's Bijidama, Dustless smiled indifferently. His eyes were focused on the huge Bijidama, as calm as stagnant water. It's really stupid to release Bijidama so carelessly. It's full of flaws. Dustless coldly stared at Kyubi, who was concentrating on condensing Bijidama. Kyubi must be fully concentrated when releasing Bijidama. This is definitely the best opportunity to sneak attack them. Dustless's pupils rapidly twisted. A dark irregular ghost fire flashed in his sight, and at the same time, Kensusanu's right arm suddenly burned with black flame. The black flame was controlled, and the irregular state quickly compressed and condensed into a huge shuriken shape. Kensusanu Amaterasu. Boom. Whiz. Kensusanu took a step forward, stirring up a lot of dust, raised his arm high, and used all his strength to throw out the shuriken formed by Amaterasu. The powerful force directly broke away from the shuriken of Kakashi's Kamui and went straight toward the Bijudama. The dark shuriken was invincible. It was condensed by the fire of Amaterasu, and anything that came in contact with it was completely annihilated and disappeared with the wind. And now it used Kyubi shuriken to turn Amaterasu into a shuriken that can cut iron like mud. Its power can be imagined. Puchi. The giant Bijudama was forcibly torn apart like a piece of cloth. It was split into two halves, and immediately burst open like water droplets. It was extremely powerless. It didn't even explode before it was directly swallowed by the Amaterasu. Everything that came in contact with it was vaporized. Even if Kyubi didn't react in time and avoid the scattered Amaterasu, his body may be swallowed by the black flame from hell. So weak. Dustless chuckled, and his wrinkled eyebrows dispersed, revealing an elegant smile, which was particularly refreshing. Even if he only used 30% of his strength, it seems to be more than enough to deal with these people. Boom boom boom. At this time, the ground suddenly cracked, and a tyrannical airwave like a hurricane spread in all directions. Layer after layer of the ground was miserably peeled off, and the ground was blown bare. Dustless's pupil suddenly shrank, and a rare look of horror appeared in his eyes. It's actually blue steam. Chapter 247. The earth shattered like paper, and the solid ground was like being attacked by a meteorite from the universe. It was not worth mentioning, and it disintegrated into debris in an instant. Due to the excessive consumption of chakra and dojutsu, Kakashi's physical strength was exhausted, and he released the restriction of Kamui. The space around Wuxia finally restored its tranquility, and the deep-sea vortex that shrouded the void finally failed. The boundless sky was finally as clear as before, and the original peaceful appearance was restored. Gayu, Kakashi, who fainted on the ground and was half dead, struggled to open his eyes and looked at Guy, who was full of blue steam. He wanted to stand up and fight side by side with this friend of his for many years, but the severe pain all over his body made it difficult for him to do so, and it was extremely difficult for him to speak. This was the side effect of forcibly using Mangekyo. Whether it was the physical or mental blow, it was great, and it was not impossible for it to consume the vitality of humans. Kakashi, you have done everything you can, and the rest is up to me and Naruto. With a gentle smile, Guy gave Kakashi a thumbs up. His tone was full of confidence, and his eyes flashed with bright colors. Blue steam curled around the surface of Guy's clothes, and the solidified gas crushed the air into nothingness. Any matter that came into contact with Guy would be treated roughly. Dustless in Kensusanu perfect form looked gloomy at this scene, and a haze appeared between his eyebrows. Looking at Guy, he faintly felt a trace of threat. Is this the Hashiman Tanku? It's really not simple. Lowering his head, his eyes locked on Guy, who was wrapped in blue steam. Dustless was secretly on guard. Guy's body was emitting blue steam, which meant that this guy had opened the seventh gate. The Gate of Wonder. Boom. 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 A strong hurricane spread out from Guy's body, and the invisible air waves were more terrifying than the solidified attack. The damaged earth began to collapse, and the air was blown away, forming a large vacuum area that was suffocating. Whether it is speed, strength, or physical abilities, it seems that there is a leap in progress. Perceiving the power fluctuations in Guy's body, Dustless secretly nodded. The power of the Hashiman Tanku is beyond common sense, and it can't be estimated by ordinary physical strength. Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan stared at Guy, and suddenly remembered this guy's record. Recalling the past, Dustless still vaguely remembered that Guy seemed to have only used the Gate of Wonder 3 times, but each time, it was unforgettable. The big move Hiru no Tiger was even more terrifying. The first time, it directly killed Kisame. The second time, it instantly killed Uchiha Madara's help Hachibi's attack. And the third time, it was used by Madara's staff of the Six Paths. It was not difficult to see how terrifying Guy's Guy was. Suddenly, Mato Guy, who was exposed to the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, suddenly disappeared, and his body disappeared between heaven and earth like a shadow. What a fast speed! His pupils suddenly enlarged. Dustless's huge perception suddenly spread out, and all the wind and grass within a few kilometers were taken into his eyes, not letting go of any subtle things. Bastard, where the hell did this guy go? Dustless, who was highly concentrated, cursed in his heart. His dark eyes were sharp like an eagle's, and his sharp eyes swept towards the silent void in the distance, taking everything in the surroundings into his eyes. Guy completely disappeared as if he escaped into the void, and his aura disappeared out of thin air. I underestimated this beast, worthy of the beast that can penetrate Madara's body in the future. Dustless's face was black, and he exerted the dynamic capture ability of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to the limit, but he still couldn't find any trace of Guy. Ayo. As if seeing Dustless's uneasiness, Kyuubi took the opportunity to attack. He opened his big mouth, and the evil chakra wave was once again ejected, and a high-speed rotating energy ball was suddenly formed, intending to loot the burning house. Looking at the situation, Kyuubi wanted to take advantage of Dustless's uneasiness to deal the most fatal blow. Reckless thing, if you can defeat me, I would have already died a long time ago. With a cold smile on his face, Wuchen thought inwardly. The contempt and disdain on his face were obvious. He looked at the nine tails that had condensed by Jidama again. His face was overflowing with gloomy and cold aura, and his whole body was suffused with oppression. Whoosh! The huge Bijidama whistled and directly oppressed Dustless's Kensusanu. And the violent wind roared in the sky, and the violent airwaves oppressed people's nerve endings. Pretending to be mysterious. With a sneer, Dustless stared at Shio's Bijidama without the slightest fear. At the same time, Kensusanu raised his katana of light high, and casually chopped down. Whoosh! An ear-piercing sound of breaking the air resounded, and the earth was suddenly torn apart. Immediately, a white light was shot out from the light sword, and the dazzling white light almost covered the entire horizon, leaving a long and narrow trace in the endless void. The sky was so small, and the earth was so unbearable. Boom boom boom. The Bijidama was suddenly shuttled back and forth by the golden white light, and the powerful force directly tore it into two halves with ease. Something is wrong. Bijidama is not that easy to destroy. Wrinkling his brows, Dustless had a doubtful look in his eyes. Bijidama was not that easy to destroy. Especially the most powerful Bijidama among the tailed beasts, Kyuubi's Bijidama was extremely powerful. Being able to use his own Bijidama to fight against 5 other tailed beasts without losing explained everything. But now, it was easily torn apart like a bubble. Could it be? The corner of his eyes fiercely twitched, and suddenly, he felt an unprecedented power fluctuation coming from behind him. Turning his head, he saw Mato Guy whistling over. There was also a super large white tiger rushing towards Dustless to tear him apart. Suddenly, a strong fluctuation of chakra was also transmitted from the front. Looking around, he didn't know when, but Kyuubi had already gathered an even bigger Bijidama, and madly spat out evil chakra towards the sky. Because of the Bijidama's power, even the sky darkened. This is the power of Kyuubi. It dyed all things in the world with its own color. So that's how it is. I was tricked. It was a miscalculation. Using Bijidama to attract my attention, and then attacking me from both sides. What a hilarious and vulgar plan. How can humans and beasts be so close? It's really hard to believe. Dustless silently sighed, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He also put away his 100-meter-tall Kensusanu. Facing such a fierce attack, his expression was calm, and he didn't even try to defend himself. Such a short distance was impossible to dodge, and Kensusanu wasn't good at moving. It would only be passively taking a beating if it stayed, and Dustless didn't think that Kensusanu could resist the joint attack of both sides at the same time. Kyuubi, who had opened 7 gates, wasn't an ordinary creature. His fighting strength had increased by dozens of times, and the other side had Kyuubi's huge Bijidama. Dustless wasn't sure if Consusanu could resist. I didn't expect that I would need to use this to deal with you too. It's really ironic. The amount of chakra is not much. If I use this now, I'm afraid it will be consumed even faster. Looking up at the dark sky with Kyuubi's chakra, Dustless helplessly shook his head. After all, this is the body after using elephant rotation jutsu. His strength is only 30% of the original body. The same is true for chakra. The series of fights just now also consumed a lot of chakra. It's time to let this group of clowns see my real eye power. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless's right eye began to twist rapidly, and the bloody pupil quickly disappeared. What's surprising is that it didn't turn into a normal human's black eye, but blue eye. The irregular eye is like a snowflake, and the blue eye is crystal clear. Compared to the evil eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, this unknown eye is undoubtedly more normal, and it gives people a particularly peaceful feeling. What kind of eye is that? Madogai looked coldly at Dustless's right eye. Although it looks ordinary, it's definitely not difficult to guess that it's definitely some kind of powerful eye. It's precisely because this mysterious eye is stronger than the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan that Dustless chose to use it. I'll let you know the horror of the Tensigen. With endless killing intent surging out of his right eye, Dustless began to quickly form hand seals. The method of forming hand seals is extremely strange and rarely seen. It's obviously some kind of ancient or unknown jutsu. Dustless's thin body suddenly swept up the green chakra, covering his body tightly like a protective shield. Behind Dustless floated several green prayer beads, which are particularly mysterious. The size is exactly the same as the truth-seeking ball. The only difference is that the truth-seeking ball is black, and these prayer beads are green. Facing such a dilemma, Dustless resolutely broke out all his strength and entered the chakra mode of the Tensigen. His whole body was wrapped in the green chakra coat. At this moment, Dustless was particularly strange. His body was filled with two different temperaments. His left eye was a deep blood red and dark eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which was extremely evil and terrifying, while his right eye was a blue Tensigen, which was ordinary and simple. There was nothing different about it, giving people a strange feeling. Let me burn you, Hyuga Tiger. Damned human, this old man will tear you to shreds right now. I'll even destroy your bones and leave nothing behind. As the roars of Madogai and Kyuubi fell, the giant white tiger and the mountain-like Baijidama suddenly rushed towards Dustless. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be frozen and time stopped here. It's useless. This kind of attack can't cause substantial damage to me. Dustless in the chakra mode of the Tensigen shook his head. The several green prayer beads behind him suddenly gathered together. The solid green beads suddenly liquefied, with Dustless as the center, forming a perfect 360-degree defense. Chapter 248. Kakashi opened his eyes wide, trying hard to look at the giant white tiger, as well as the super large-scale evil chakra sphere. Then looking at the defensive layer of Dustless's defense, the rock in his heart finally relaxed. Such a simple defense can't withstand the simultaneous attack of Kyuubi and Guy. It seems that this is the end. A calm smile appeared on Kakashi's face. His tense heart finally relaxed. Kakashi's face flashed with a touch of relief. The pressure that Dustless gave him was too great. If he could take this opportunity to eliminate him, not only would it be the honor of the Fire Country, but it would also be something worth singing and laughing about in the entire world. For Kakashi to have such thoughts, it was human nature. Who would be afraid of this kind of godlike enemy? So it's better to eliminate him as soon as possible. However, he was destined to be disappointed in the next scene. That black and inconspicuous barrier looked extraordinary, but in fact, there was something else about it. It was as thin as a piece of paper. Not to mention facing a vicious attack like Baijidama. Even a child's gentle touch would shatter it. It was not even worth mentioning. The reality was completely opposite. How is this possible? Taking a deep breath, Kakashi opened his eyes wide. His bloodshot eyes were even more frightening at this moment. His fists were tightly clenched with sweat. He thought that the barrier as thin as a cicada's wing would be torn apart, but the result was the opposite. The situation made Kakashi's eyes wide open. He didn't recover for a while. He stood there sluggishly, his statue-like breathing also stopped. The one that collapsed wasn't the unsightly barrier, but the giant Baijidama with monstrous momentum. Are you kidding me? How can such a ridiculous thing happen? Kakashi's pupils were dilated. They lost their luster, they were gray. He lost the ability to think. His soul and inner body seemed to have been sucked out by the devil from hell. He could only walk down the path of skin and bones, looking at the scene in front of him in amazement. Looking at it, the Baijidama seemed to have encountered the power of its natural enemy. When it came in contact with the barrier covering Dustless's body, it didn't explode, setting off a blazing fire wave. Instead, it began to strangely peel off, as if it was being melted. Its volume was constantly being reduced. In just a few breaths of time, it was completely flattened. Impossible. How can there be such a technique in this world? Kakashi's face was gloomy. His brain was spinning at a speed 10 times or even 100 times faster than usual, mobilizing all the information in his mind to analyze Dustless's technique. Kakashi had never heard of such a technique that seemed to specialize in restraining tailed beasts. Tear him apart, day tiger. The giant white creature opened its mouth wide and bit at Dustless, who was inside the barrier. The moment it came into contact with the black defensive barrier, it also began to slowly collapse and peel off. The dark barrier seemed to be the nemesis of all ninjutsu in the world. There's actually such an unheard of technique. Damn it, what has he been doing all these years? Kakashi calmly analyzed and quickly came to a conclusion. The seemingly ordinary barrier was actually like a murderer that devoured everything. Regardless of whether it had vitality or not, as long as it came into contact with that black and swarthy end, it would gradually collapse and be irreparable. Even a powerful ninjutsu like Baijidama couldn't escape its corrosion. Once a human body comes in contact with it, the result is self-evident. It seems that it's over. It was a false alarm. Removing the black barrier, Dustless smiled slightly. Several green beads appeared behind him again, following Dustless's body, very mysterious, shining with dazzling light. Needless to say, the previous black barrier was also made by these strange beads. What is that thing? It seems to be able to ignore ninjutsu. Anything that touches it will collapse. Uzumaki Naruto, who was hiding in Kyuubi's mouth, was horrified. It was the first time he saw such a terrifying technique. No matter what it touches, it will be swallowed by the unsightly beads. Even the dust without life is no exception. That jutsu, and his right eye bastard, what the hell did this freak do? Kyuubi's eyes were filled with monstrous ripples. He roared madly in his heart. He always felt that there was an invisible big hand holding his neck. It was very uncomfortable. It was a deterrent that penetrated deep into his soul. In particular, the green beads behind Dustless particularly attracted Kyuubi's attention. He felt a supreme power from them that can erase everything in the world. This is the first time I used it. Looking at the green beads behind him, Wuxia murmured softly. His eyes were calm like an ancient well. He was exceptionally quiet, without any emotional fluctuations. As for the annihilation of the Baijidama and Baijidama, Dustless seemed to have forgotten about it. His eyes were indifferently looking at the void in front of him. Time seems to be up. After a long silence, Dustless said. His dull eyes were shining. The Ichibi has been completely sealed inside the Ghetto Mazo. The task given to him by Pain has also been completed. It seems that it's useless to get you now. Anyway, I already have your Ein attribute chakra. Staring at Kyuubi, Dustless secretly said. The seal of the bijou has been completely completed. There is no need to continue at all. When he was considering whether to leave or not, someone took the initiative to attack. There is a road to heaven, but you don't take it. There is no door to hell, but you send yourself to it. Turning his head, revealing half of his cold face, Dustless looked indifferently at the galloping Mato guy, then turned his head and continued to look at the sky in front of him, but his arm gently swung in the direction of Mato guy. The green beads behind him were guided by Dustless, and suddenly turned into a black sphere and whizzed out. If you are hit by the truth-seeking ball, even if you are a rare beast, your body will be fragmented. Looking at the truth-seeking ball flying out, Dustless said lightly, It stands to reason that Dustless doesn't have the power to control the truth-seeking ball. The reason why he can control the truth-seeking ball at will is entirely thanks to the Tensigen, which is the Tensigen chakra mode. Chapter 249. There is no doubt about the terror of the truth-seeking ball. It is known as the strongest ninjutsu that can both destroy and create the world. It has all the properties of the 5 elements and the power of yin and yang. It is a bloody net that surpasses the Kekkei Genkai. However, this jutsu is not without loopholes. First of all, the biggest limitation is its distance. Not only Dustless but also Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Obito, and Uzumaki Naruto, the range of control is only 70 meters. Whoosh! In the short confrontation just now, Madogai had also realized the extraordinariness and terror of this black bead. Therefore, he took the initiative to stay a distance away from the black bead as he cautiously observed the changes of the black bead. He was very alert, not at all like the hot-blooded child he was before. It can be used to attack or defend. How do you break this invincible technique? Kakashi couldn't help but sweat for the future of the shinobi world. He has already seen the horror of this black bead. Not to mention touching it, even if it reaches a certain distance, it will disappear. The two sides were on completely different levels. This was the difference in dimensions, not the difference in strength. At the very least, they were not strong enough. As long as they worked together, they might be able to defeat their opponents. However, the difference in dimensions was different. The difference in strength between them was like heaven and earth. Kakashi was desperate, staring at the thin back. He couldn't help but despair, and his heart was heavy. Boom! The ground beside him suddenly trembled, and immediately a dazzling golden brilliance rushed over, pulling Kakashi back to reality. Staring at the tall figure rushing over, it was Kyuubi and Uzumaki Naruto. It is precisely because of Dustless's unprecedented high pressure that Kyuubi and the extremely annoying human chose to join forces. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. Such a simple truth is known to the world. Is it you, Kyuubi? Hurry up and take Naruto dash. Come here, kid. Without waiting for Kakashi's voice to fall, Kyuubi became arrogant and overbearing, and his tone showed that he couldn't be disobeyed. If it was in the past, Kakashi would never get close to Kyuubi, the strongest-tailed beast. Kyuubi's fierce name is known to the world, and the fear of Kyuubi has reached the level of crying children. We have no chance of winning at all. With your strength, it shouldn't be a problem to escape with Naruto. Kakashi walked to Kyuubi's side and couldn't help but persuade him. Kyuubi was the most important thing to Konoha, and he couldn't be lost. Shut up. Kyuubi's eyelids suddenly rolled, revealing a bone-chilling murderous intent. Kyuubi directly swallowed Kakashi into her mouth. She immediately lifted her gaze and stared at Madogai, who was entangled with Dustless. She said in a deep voice, "That crazy man has spied on the path to becoming a god. I'm afraid that soon the world will fall into chaos." She stared at the pearl behind Dustless and pulled a long face. "I didn't think that you, the embodiment of calamity, would worry about the lives of mortals." Filling Kyuubi's mouth, looking at Dustless's figure, Kakashi laughed at himself. His tone was filled with endless bitterness and melancholy. It's not that he didn't want to resist Dustless, but that strange ninjutsu couldn't deal with it at all. "Kakashi, sensei, we will definitely defeat that bastard." Uzumaki Naruto stared at Dustless with shining eyes. His whole body was filled with a strong fighting spirit. Compared to Kakashi, who had no fighting spirit, his fighting spirit was much stronger. But the gap between us and him is too big. We are not in the same dimension, and my chakra has reached the bottom. I don't even have the strength to move. He shook his head helplessly. In the previous fight, he had exhausted countless chakra, and his body had reached the bottom. Not to mention fighting, even walking was very difficult. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto, who was full of fighting spirit, his eyes dimmed. When he was about to persuade Kyuubi to take Uzumaki Naruto away again, his body was suddenly enveloped by a golden light. This chakra. It's Kyuubi's chakra. Bathing in the golden light, Kyuubi was stunned, and looked at Kyuubi puzzledly. This golden light was undoubtedly Kyuubi's chakra. When he was about to ask, the dry chakra in his body surged again. and even reached the level of chakra that was dozens of times higher than his own. The fatigue from the previous battle was also swept away, and his spirit was refreshed. This old man's chakra is good, but unfortunately, your body is too weak to withstand more chakra. Looking closely, Kakashi was wearing a crimson-tailed beast coat, and his whole body was covered with chakra. The high-density chakra was particularly rich and dazzling, and it decorated the surrounding void. In less than a few blinks of an eye, Kakashi's chakra had completely recovered. What an amazing recovery speed! Perceiving that his body was full of chakra, Kakashi immediately looked at Kyuubi's serious face, and his heart was slightly shocked. No wonder the major ninja villages are so fond of tailed beasts. Aside from their super combat power, just this majestic chakra that can restore anyone is enough to make people scramble for it. The pearl on his back is very troublesome. Squinting his eyes, his blood-red eyes revealed a deep light of wisdom. The fox face looked at Dustless, and Kyuubi's cat face was cautious. Indeed, although I don't know the specific function of this technique, at present, it can be used to retreat, defend and attack. It can be called an invincible technique. Kakashi, who had recovered, nodded in agreement. His tone was stronger than before, and his voice was much louder. His pupils had become blood-red due to excessive exhaustion, and they once again returned to their original human appearance. Obviously, the Kyuubi's chakra was very useful. You are a smart human. Kyuubi looked at Kakashi with a strange look, and at the same time his tone was filled with endless killing intent. In fact, his technique also has weaknesses. Chapter 250. There is no invincible ninjutsu in the world. No matter how gorgeous and powerful it is, no matter how invincible it is, there is always a loophole. Because things like jutsu are created by ordinary mortals, as something created by human beings with loopholes. How can it be perfect? Kyuubi's blood-red eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was confident and didn't look worried at all. It's not that he's talking nonsense. In the long years of the past, he has seen too many so-called invincible ninjutsu, but there are some loopholes. The ninjutsu used by Dustless at the moment is such. But we can't even touch that guy, what can we do? Squeezing his fist, Kakashi asked self-deprecatingly. The enemy is just standing in front of him, and he can't catch him and bring him to justice. Instead, he has to avoid this enemy from time to time. His heart is naturally aggrieved. Even an absolutely rational ninja like Kakashi is sullen. Are you saying that my dojutsu can restrain him? Kakashi's mind suddenly flashed. He is not a fool. He himself is the kind of genius ninja. Without waiting for Kyuubi to say it, he already knew what Kyuubi was thinking. Yes, your dojutsu is his natural enemy. Kyuubi sneered at Dustless, who was fighting with Guy in the distance. He said with a cold voice, with 100% certainty that the strange green beads can't nullify space ninjutsu at all. Space ninjutsu is also invisible, especially a brilliant space-time ninjutsu like Kamui. It directly uses the gravitational force to strangle the enemy. It has no shape. It can't nullify it at all. It's not impossible to try. After thinking about it, Kakashi also felt that it is a feasible plan. There is no other reason. Kamui is also impossible to defend, and it is more elusive, irresistible special ninjutsu. Especially after receiving Kyuubi's gift of chakra, Kakashi's confidence is extremely skyrocketing. They may be able to take down Dustless together. But that guy's right eye seems to be strange, although it looks very ordinary. The ability to nullify space ninjutsu seems to be the ability of his right eye. Recalling Dustless's irregular blue eyes, Kakashi said with lingering fear. The terror of the truth-seeking jade was not something that could be described with words. I've never seen those eyes before. Hearing this, Kyuubi just shook his head. He had never seen Dustless's eyes before. It was neither Sharingan nor Byakugan, nor the legendary Rinnegan. It was a new kind of eyes. But what's certain is that those eyes are definitely not simple, at least stronger than his Sharingan. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to use them. Kyuubi was very sure about this. No matter what, the blue eyes were definitely stronger than Dustless's Sharingan, because there was no reason not to use the strong eyes and use the blue eyes instead. That beast and I will be in charge of attacking that brat. You take the opportunity to deal a fatal blow to him. Kyubi's lips twitched slightly as he stared at Guy, who was fighting with Dustless. He was also shocked by Guy after he activated the Gate of Wonder. This was because Guy's speed and strength were not inferior to his. In fact, Guy was even suppressing him. I'll try my best. I'll definitely give him a fatal blow. Kakashi's tone suddenly stagnated. Looking at Madokai, who was desperately fighting with Dustless, he murderously said. His companions risked their lives to exchange for a sneak attack. He couldn't let go of the opportunity, even if it was a one-time failure. Hey, how could you forget about me? I'll definitely beat that guy. Uzumaki Naruto saw that Kyubi and Kakashi ignored him, so he had to stand up and prove that he was still alive and well. Naruto doesn't need you to intervene. Kakashi gave Uzumaki Naruto a comforting look, indicating that he didn't need to do anything, and it was not his turn to intervene. After all, this kid wasn't very useful now. Instead, if Niji and the others hid together, it would be beneficial to the battle. Hearing this, Uzumaki Naruto secretly clenched his fists and lowered his head. He was also speechless. He really didn't have the ability to support Kakashi and others now. He just needed to stay quietly in Kyubi's mouth. The other side was also in a fierce stalemate, and both sides were fighting to the death. In the beginning, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame could still fight with Jiraiya and Chio Popo of the Sand-Hidden Village, but as time passed, chakra was getting weaker and weaker, and he was about to lose. Whether it was Uchiha Itachi or Kisame, both of them were at a disadvantage. If it was his main body, it would be easy, but now he only had 30% of his main body's strength, and it was quite difficult to fight against veteran powerhouses like Jiraiya and Chio Popo. Whether it was Jiraiya or Chio Popo, both of them were well-deserved Kage-level powerhouses, and their strength was naturally beyond doubt. About half an hour later, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame were defeated one after another, and the corpses that were killed also turned into the original sacrificial offerings. With chakra exhausted, the so-called sacrificial offerings naturally couldn't escape the end of death. All of them died with fear, as if they were cursed when they were alive. What a vicious technique. What the hell are those crazy guys of the Akatsuki doing? Chio Popo looked at the sacrificial offerings that were killed by her, and her heart was cold. She didn't even need to think about it. Gaara, the Ichibi's Jinchuriki, was also doomed. Maybe he was already killed by the Akatsuki. Hurry up and support Kakashi and the others. Dispelling all the irritating thoughts in his mind, Jiraiya said in a deep voice. He didn't want to worry about the success or failure of the mission now, as long as Uzumaki Naruto and Kakashi were safe. Chio Popo nodded and didn't object to Jiraiya's proposal, because as early as after the Chunin exam, the two villages had signed an alliance agreement and became true allies. It can be said that they were wearing the same pants. Chapter 251. In the cold cave, there was a depression. There was no flow of air, no beautiful colors. The only thing that existed was the dark color that could swallow everything. It seems that the opponents of the two of you are not simple. They were defeated. Itachi Kisame. Pain, who closed his eyes, opened his eyes and looked at the bodies of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame. His Rinnegan surged with ripples, and the circles of black lines under his eyes rippled like water ripples. The strength of Itachi and Kisame is obvious to all. They are known as the power combination, and their strength is self-evident. It's Jiraiya and Chio of the Sand-Hidden Village. Looking up, Itachi replied indifferently, his tone full of calmness. She's over 50 years old, but she can unexpectedly fight. Ghost Merman recalled the scene when he fought against Grandma Chio. His eyes sparkled with surprise, and he couldn't help but admire her. It was true that time didn't spare anyone, but her amazing puppet controlling skills seemed to have stopped the erosion of time. Her vivid and exquisite skills had left a deep impression on him. Her perfect technical attainments are probably unparalleled in the world. If I have to find someone who can match her, I'm afraid it's only Sasori. Kisame thought to himself as he glanced at Sasori out of the corner of his eye. After all, Scorpion's ability to control puppets was well known to everyone. The tailed beasts have been stripped, it's time to retreat. Looking at the open eyes of the Ghetto Mazo, Pain nodded secretly, looked around, and saw all the achievements of the Akatsuki organization. His confidence swelled, and the gathering of tailed beasts was just around the corner. What's the news about Nibi? Staring at Jiraiya expectantly, Pain's tone showed some rare human emotional fluctuations, and he was no longer a walking corpse like before. Perhaps because most of the tailed beasts were in the hands of the Akatsuki, his indifferent tone softened. Hearing this, Jiraiya's face immediately became awkward and unnatural. In fact, since the Akatsuki began to capture tailed beasts, he was responsible for the collection of information about tailed beasts. After a period of time, the news of Nibi's Jinchuriki was not found. Instead, it seemed to have evaporated into thin air, and the world disappeared. I'm sorry I didn't find second last either. Looking at Pain's eyes, Black Zetsu reported in a hoarse voice. His tone was bitter and helpless. He cursed the people of the Cloud Village for being cunning and hiding the Nibi Jinchuriki in advance. Hearing this, all the members of Akatsuki looked at the helpless Jew in surprise. His simple answer gave him an indescribable headache. Clearly, he had put in a lot of effort to find second last over the years. Thank you for your hard work. He frowned. Although he was not satisfied with Zetsu's explanation, Pain couldn't get angry. He knew that Zetsu had tried his best. The wantonly capture of Bijou has attracted the attention of the major ninja villages. It's understandable that Cloud Village hid their Jinchuriki in advance. But one thing is certain. Seeming to think of something, White Zetsu stared at Pain and said with great certainty. Although there is no trace of Nibi at present, it is certain that Nibi's Jinchuriki is definitely not on the mainland. Because my clones are spread all over the inland areas of the world. The confident voice spread, and White Zetsu's tone was firm. No one doubted this. After all, his clones were spread all over the world. This is also good information. Pain nodded. This is also valuable information. Maybe Nibi's Jinchuriki is hidden on an unknown island, but there are countless islands overseas, and they are scattered all over the world. No one knows how many islands there are, and it will take some time to find them. There's no point in fighting, retreat Dustless. Suddenly looking at Dustless, Pain said blankly. Itachi and Hoshigaki's bodies were temporarily defeated, and only Dustless has not been defeated yet. Dustless nodded when he heard the words, and his body that was fighting with Kakashi and others also changed, revealing the original sacrifice appearance. His death was particularly miserable, and his body seemed to be sucked dry, leaving only skin and bones. Retreat? Are you kidding me? We should take advantage of the victory and annihilate the enemy in one fell swoop. Their lineup is very strong, but our lineup is even stronger. Haiden immediately stood up and stepped in. The lineup of Sand Hidden Village and Konoha Village is very strong, but the members of Akatsuki are very strong. They can definitely crush the other side. How can they easily let go of the opportunity to annihilate the enemy? Of course, Haiden actually wanted to vent his anger. Because it's completely unnecessary. This kind of thing that consumes energy and doesn't get any benefits is not necessary. On the contrary, it may completely expose the entire organization to the enemy. With a cold light in his eyes, Pain said firmly, even if the matter of Akatsuki has been known to everyone, and there are no secrets worth talking about, this kind of thing that doesn't get any benefits and will only be exposed, he will never do it. Benefits? We can catch the little devil Kyuubi and eradicate the future troubles by the way. Haiden immediately shouted. The purpose of Akatsuki is Bijou. Now Uzumaki Naruto is among this group of people, and he can also eradicate many strong people from the two major ninja villages. It's absolutely killing two birds with one stone. Your idea is too naive, Haiden. Staring at Haiden, who argued with reason, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He understood Pain's idea. At present, as the controller of Ghetto Mazo, Uzumaki Nagato naturally understood that the seal of Bijou must start from the Ichibi first, and it must be sealed according to the number of tails. Even if they get Kyuubi now, it's useless, they can't seal it. If they want to seal Kyubi, they must seal all the other 8 bijou. Now that there is no trace of Nibi, even if they catch Kyubi, it's meaningless. It's just one more bijou, and now the Akatsuki doesn't have any bijou. The bijou that was captured before is still there. The arm can't twist the leg. Haiden was still speechless. If anyone's opinion is not valued in Akatsuki, it is undoubtedly Haiden. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.